When Michael Jordan opened a letter from his childhood friend after 40 years, he thought he was just saving a girl's life. He had no idea what his friend was really trying to save. Dwayne Mitchell's daughter was dying of cancer. Michael paid $800,000 for her treatment. She lived. But when the story got out, millions of people called Michael selfish for helping only one child. What nobody knew was the shocking truth about why Dwayne really wrote that letter. What was Dwayne secretly losing that scared him more than his daughter's cancer? And would the real reason behind his desperate letter change everything the world thought about this story? Michael Jordan sat behind his mahogany desk on the 40th floor of his Chicago office building. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished wood. Outside his window, the city buzzed with life, but inside his office, everything felt quiet and still. He picked up his coffee cup and took a sip. The bitter taste helped him focus on the stack of papers in front of him. Business deals, endorsement contracts, meeting schedules. This was his life now, 30 years after his last game. His assistant, Maria, knocked on the door and stepped inside. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had worked for Michael for 10 years and knew when something was important. "Mr. Jordan," she said softly, "this came in today's mail." She placed a worn envelope on his desk. The paper was yellowed at the edges, and the handwriting looked shaky. Michael glanced at the return address. His breath caught in his throat. Dwayne Mitchell was written in blue ink. Below that, Wilmington, North Carolina. His hands began to tremble slightly as he picked up the envelope. He had not seen that name in 40 years. D-Train. His best friend from childhood. The boy who taught him how to stand up to bullies and never give up on his dreams. "Are you okay, Mr. Jordan?" Maria asked. She noticed how pale his face had become. "I'm fine," Michael said, but his voice sounded strange even to himself. "Thank you, Maria. Please hold my calls for the next hour." Maria nodded and quietly left the room, closing the door behind her. Michael stared at the envelope for a long moment. His name was written on the front in that same shaky handwriting. Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Nobody had called him by his full name like that since he was a kid. It made him feel 13 years old again. He carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a faded photograph. Two young boys stood beside a rusty basketball hoop in a cracked driveway. One boy was tall and thin, with a bright smile. The other was shorter but had the biggest grin Michael had ever seen. Michael's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the picture. He remembered that day. It was the summer before his family moved away from Wilmington. He and Dwayne had asked Mrs. Patterson, their neighbor, to take their picture. They wanted to remember their friendship forever. A folded piece of paper fell out of the envelope. Michael's hands shook as he opened it. The letter was written on plain white paper with a blue pen. Some words were smudged, as if tears had fallen on them. "Dear MJ," the letter began. Nobody had called him MJ in decades. "I hope this letter finds you well. I know it's been 40 years since we talked. I tried to reach you many times over the years, but you became famous and I could never get through to you. I'm writing because I need your help. I would not ask if I had any other choice. You know I was never one to beg for anything. My daughter Zara is 22 years old. She is the light of my life. Just like you were my best friend all those years ago. Zara is sick. Very sick. She has cancer. MJ, a rare kind that keeps coming back no matter what the doctors do. There is one treatment that might save her. It's new and experimental. The doctors in Houston say it could give her a real chance. But it costs $800,000. Insurance won't pay for it because it's not proven yet. I have sold everything I own. My house, my truck, even my wife's wedding ring. Rosa died 5 years ago in a car accident. I know you would have liked her. She had the same kind of heart you had as a kid. I have raised $200,000, but I need $600,000 more. I know that's a lot of money, even for someone like you. I'm not asking for charity. I will pay you back somehow. I will work until the day I die if I have to. She's all I have left, MJ. She's everything good in this world. She volunteers at the library reading to little kids. She makes me laugh when I want to cry. She has your same spirit. She never gives up, no matter how hard things get. I'm not the same kid you used to know. I'm 63 now. My back hurts from 30 years of construction work. My hands are rough and my hair is gray, but I still remember the promise we made that last day before you moved away. We said we would always be brothers. We said we would always be there for each other. I know you have probably forgotten about that skinny kid from Wilmington who used to beat you at one-on-one sometimes, but I have never forgotten you. Not for a single day. Please call me if you can. My number is 910-555-7823. If you can't help, I understand. But please call anyway. I would like to hear your voice again before I lose the most important person in my world. Your old friend, Dwayne D. Train Mitchell. P.S. Do you still have that wooden basketball I carved for you? I hope you do. Michael set the letter down on his desk. His vision was blurry with tears. He walked to the window and looked out at the busy street below. People rushed past on the sidewalks, going about their normal lives. None of them knew that his world had just been turned upside down. He thought about that wooden basketball. It sat on his desk at home, next to a picture of his own children. He had kept it all these years, even when he moved from house to house, from city to city. It was one of his most treasured possessions, though he had never told anyone why. Michael remembered the day Dwayne gave it to him. They were 13 years old, sitting on the steps of Dwayne's apartment building. Michael's family was leaving Wilmington the next morning. They both tried not to cry, but tears came anyway. I made this for you, Dwayne had said, pulling the wooden basketball from his backpack. It was rough around the edges, but Michael could see how much work had gone into it. Carved into the side were the words "Brothers Forever." They had cut their palms with Dwayne's pocket knife and pressed them together, mixing their blood. No matter what happens, Dwayne had said, we'll always be brothers. Always. Michael wiped his eyes and returned to his desk. He picked up the photograph again. Those two boys looked so young, so full of hope and dreams. They had no idea what life would bring them. He reached for his phone, then stopped. His finger hovered over the numbers. What would he say? How do you talk to someone after 40 years? How do you explain why you never called, never wrote, never tried to find them? But as he looked at the letter again, at Dwayne's desperate words about his dying daughter, Michael knew he had no choice. Some promises were too important to break, even after all these years. He took a deep breath and began to dial. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Michael's heart pounded in his chest. What if Dwayne didn't answer? What if 40 years was too long to bridge? On the 4th ring, a tired voice answered. Hello, D-Train? Michael's voice came out as barely a whisper. There was silence on the other end. Then a sharp intake of breath. NJ? Is that really you? Yeah, it's me. Michael closed his eyes. The voice was older, rougher around the edges, but it was definitely Dwayne. I got your letter. I wasn't sure you would call, Dwayne said softly. I wasn't even sure the letter would reach you. Michael set the phone down and put it on speaker. He needed both hands free to wipe his eyes. Tell me about Zara, he said. Tell me about your daughter. As Dwayne began to speak, Michael's mind drifted back to the summer of 1975. He was 11 years old, and his family had just moved to a small house on Maple Street in Wilmington. He didn't know anyone, and spent most days shooting baskets alone in his driveway. That's when he first saw Dwayne Mitchell. The boy was riding a beat-up bicycle with one flat tire. He wore a faded t-shirt with holes in it, and sneakers held together with duct tape, but he had the biggest smile Michael had ever seen. You any good at basketball? Dwayne had called out, stopping his bike at the end of Michael's driveway. I'm okay, Michael said, dribbling the ball between his legs. I bet I can beat you, Dwayne said with a grin. He hopped off his bike and walked onto the court. First one to 21 wins. Michael looked at Dwayne's worn-out sneakers and torn shirt. This should be easy, he thought. But Dwayne surprised him. The smaller boy was quick and scrappy. He dove for every loose ball and never gave up on a play. Michael won that first game 21-18. Good game, Dwayne said, shaking Michael's hand. You want to play again tomorrow? From that day forward, they were inseparable. Dwayne lived in Green Meadows, the poorest part of Wilmington. His apartment was small and dark, with water stains on the ceiling and cracks in the walls. His mother, Carmen, worked 2 jobs just to pay rent and buy food. But Dwayne never complained. He never felt sorry for himself. Instead, he made Michael laugh harder than anyone ever had. He told jokes and did funny voices. He could imitate their teachers so perfectly that Michael would nearly fall off his chair laughing. My mama says being poor ain't nothing to be ashamed of, Dwayne told Michael one day as they walked to the community center. She says being mean is what you should be ashamed of. Dwayne proved that every day. when bigger kids picked on smaller ones at school. Dwayne was the first to step in. He got in plenty of fights defending others, even though he was one of the smallest kids in their grade. "Why do you do that?" Michael asked after Dwayne got a black eye standing up to Tommy Williams, who was picking on a kid with glasses. "Because somebody has to," Dwayne said simply. "If we don't look out for each other, who will?" That's when Michael knew Dwayne was special. Not because he was tough or funny, but because he cared about people. Their friendship was built around basketball. Every day after school, they met at the old court behind Dwayne's apartment complex. The hoop was crooked and missing its net. The court was full of cracks with weeds growing through them. But to Michael and Dwayne, it was Madison Square Garden. They played one-on-one for hours. Dwayne wasn't naturally gifted like Michael, but he worked twice as hard. He practiced his free throws long after Michael went home for dinner. He studied Michael's moves and created his own. "You're gonna be famous someday," Dwayne told Michael one hot July afternoon. They were lying on the court exhausted from playing. "I can see it, you're gonna play in the NBA and be on TV and everything." "What about you?" Michael asked. "What are you gonna do?" Dwayne was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. "I'm gonna be your biggest fan. I'm gonna tell everyone I know that I used to beat Michael Jordan at basketball." "Used to?" Michael laughed. "I beat you today." "Just wait until tomorrow," Dwayne said with a wink. But Dwayne was more than just Michael's basketball partner. He was his best friend, his brother, his guide to understanding what really mattered in life. When Michael felt frustrated because his shoes weren't the newest style, Dwayne reminded him that having shoes at all was a blessing. When Michael complained about his mother's cooking, Dwayne pointed out that not everyone was lucky enough to eat dinner every night. "You got everything, MJ," Dwayne said one day. "Nice house, nice clothes, parents who love you. Don't forget to be grateful." Michael never forgot those words. The summer before Michael's family moved away was the best time of their friendship. They spent every possible moment together. They played basketball from sunrise to sunset. They rode bikes to the creek and caught tadpoles. They built a fort in the woods behind Dwayne's apartment. But as August came to an end, reality set in. Michael's father had gotten a new job. The family was moving to a bigger city with better schools and more opportunities. The night before Michael left, the boys sat on the steps of Dwayne's apartment building. Neither wanted to admit it might be the last time they would see each other. "I got something for you," Dwayne said. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small wooden basketball. It was rough around the edges, but Michael could see how much work had gone into it. "I carved it myself," Dwayne said proudly. "Look at the side." Michael turned the ball over. Carved into the wood were the words, "Brothers Forever." "No matter where you go or how famous you get," Dwayne said, "remember you got a brother in Wilmington who believes in you." They both tried not to cry, but the tears came anyway. They hugged each other tight, two 13-year-old boys who didn't want to say goodbye. "We'll stay in touch," Michael promised. "We'll write letters and call each other." "Promise?" Dwayne asked. "I promise," Michael said. They cut their palms with Dwayne's pocket knife and pressed them together, mixing their blood. "Brothers forever," they said at the same time. The next morning, Michael's family loaded their car and drove away from Wilmington. Michael watched through the back window as Dwayne stood alone on the basketball court, getting smaller and smaller until he disappeared completely. They wrote letters for a while, called each other a few times. But as months turned into years, life got in the way. Michael focused on basketball and school. He made new friends in his new city. The letters became less frequent, then stopped altogether. But Michael never threw away that wooden basketball. And he never forgot the lessons Dwayne taught him about kindness, loyalty, and what it meant to be a true friend. Now, 40 years later, sitting in his expensive office wearing a $1,000 suit, Michael felt like that 13-year-old boy again. The boy who made a promise to always be there for his brother. "MJ?" Dwayne's voice brought him back to the present. "You still there?" "Yeah," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Michael could hear Dwayne breathing, maybe crying softly. 40 years, MJ, Dwayne finally said. 40 years since I heard your voice." "I know," Michael whispered. "I'm sorry, D-Train. I should have called. I should have tried harder to find you." "Life got busy," Dwayne said. "I understand. You became this huge star, and I was just me, working construction, trying to get by." Michael winced. That wasn't how he wanted Dwayne to see it. You were never just anything to me. You were my best friend. You still are. The conversation felt awkward at first. How do you catch up on 40 years? How do you explain a lifetime in a phone call? Tell me about Rosa, Michael said gently. Tell me about your wife. Dwayne's voice softened. She was beautiful, MJ. Inside and out. Met her in high school. Right after you moved away. She had this laugh that could fill up a whole room. And she was smart, smarter than me. That's for sure. What happened? Michael asked. Car accident 5 years ago. Dwayne said quietly. Drunk driver ran a red light. Rosa was coming home from her job at the elementary school. She taught second grade. You know, loved those kids like they were her own. Michael felt his heart break for his old friend. I'm so sorry. She would have loved you, Dwayne continued. Always said she wanted to meet the famous friend I was always talking about. I showed her that picture of us by the basketball hoop. She said she could see why we were best friends. Said we both had the same stubborn look in our eye. Despite everything, Michael found himself smiling. She sounds wonderful. She was. And Zara is just like her. Smart, kind, always helping others. Even sick as she is, she still volunteers at the library reading to little kids. That's where she was when she collapsed last month. Michael's throat tightened. Tell me about the cancer. Dwayne took a deep breath. Started 2 years ago. We thought it was just the flu at first. She was tired all the time, getting sick easy. But then she started losing weight and bruising for no reason.
What kind of cancer is it?
Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The rare kind that comes back even after treatment. She's been through chemo 3 times. Radiation twice. Each time we think we beat it, and then it comes back stronger. Michael had heard of this type of cancer. His own foundation had funded research for childhood cancers. But this adult version was different, more aggressive, harder to treat. The doctors here in Wilmington have done everything they can, Dwayne continued. But there's this new treatment in Houston. Something called CAR T-cell therapy. They take her own immune cells and train them to fight the cancer better. And it costs $800,000. Plus travel and living expenses for however long we'd need to stay. Could be months. Dwayne's voice cracked. I've sold everything, MJ. The house Rosa and I bought when we got married. My truck. Even her wedding ring, though that nearly killed me to do it. Michael thought about his own wealth. $800,000 was what he spent on a weekend vacation. It was a rounding error in his investment portfolio. But for Dwayne, it might as well have been $8 million. What about insurance? Michael asked. They say it's experimental. Won't cover experimental treatments. Even if they're the only chance she has left. Dwayne's voice turned bitter. Funny how insurance will pay for all kinds of treatments that don't work, but not the one that might actually save her life. Michael stood up and walked to his window again. Below, people hurried down the sidewalk, most of them probably worrying about normal things, like traffic or what to have for lunch. None of them were facing the choice between watching their child die or going broke trying to save her. Have you told Zara you contacted me? Michael asked. No, Dwayne said quickly. And I don't want to unless you think you might be able to help. I don't want to get her hopes up for nothing. Michael understood. Hope could be cruel when it was false. She knows about you though, Dwayne continued. I've told her stories about us since she was little. About the boy who became Michael Jordan but started out as just MJ. My best friend who could make a basketball do things that seemed like magic. What does she think about those stories? Dwayne laughed softly. She always said I was making them up. Said there was no way Michael Jordan used to be somebody's regular friend. Daddy, she'd say, famous people don't have normal friends like us. That stung more than Michael expected. 'Cause in some ways, Zara was right. Fame had built walls around him. It had made normal friendships almost impossible. Everyone wanted something from him. Money, connections, reflected glory. He'd learned to be suspicious of everyone's motives. But Dwayne was different. Dwayne had known him before the fame, before the money, before any of it mattered. Dwayne had carved him a wooden basketball when they were kids. Not because he was going to be famous, but because he was his friend. I need to ask you something, Michael said. And I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Have you tried to contact me before, over the years? Dwayne was quiet for a moment. A few times. When you got drafted by the Bulls, I called the team office. They said they'd pass along the message, but you never called back. I figured you were busy. Michael's heart sank. He'd never gotten that message. His agents and managers filtered everything. They probably threw away dozens of calls from people claiming to be old friends.
I tried again when your dad died, Dwayne continued.
Sent a letter to your foundation. I wanted you to know that I was thinking about you, that I remembered how much you loved him. Michael remembered that dark time. His father's murder had shattered him. He'd quit basketball for 2 years, lost in grief and anger. A letter from Dwayne during that time would have meant everything to him. I never got it, Michael said. I'm sorry. I had people handling my mail, screening everything. They probably thought you were just another person trying to take advantage. I understand, Dwayne said. I really do. You couldn't answer every letter or take every call. You'd never have had a life. But Michael didn't understand. He felt sick thinking about all the times Dwayne had reached out and been ignored. All the years they could have been in touch if his handlers hadn't been so protective. There's something else, Dwayne said hesitantly. Something I need to tell you. What is it? I kept track of your career. Every game, every championship, every award. I have a whole scrapbook of newspaper clippings. Zara thinks I'm crazy, but I wanted to know how you were doing. I wanted to be proud of my friend, even if you didn't know I was watching. Michael's eyes filled with tears again. While he'd been surrounded by thousands of cheering fans, his childhood best friend had been quietly cheering for him from Wilmington, cutting out newspaper articles and celebrating his victories alone. I saw you win your first championship, Dwayne continued. Sat in my living room crying like a baby. Rosa thought I'd lost my mind, but I kept thinking about that kid who used to miss half his free throws, and now here he was, the best basketball player in the world. You helped make me who I am, Michael said. Those lessons you taught me about never giving up, about caring for other people. I carried those with me my whole career. You would have been great anyway, Dwayne said. You had something special from the beginning. Maybe, but I wouldn't have been the same person. They talked for another hour. About Dwayne's work, his struggles, the neighborhood that had changed so much since Michael left. About Michael's career, his family, the pressures that came with fame. But mostly they talked about Zara. How she'd been the light of Dwayne's life since the day she was born. How she'd gotten Rosa's intelligence and Dwayne's stubborn optimism. How she still believed everything would work out, even as the cancer tried to take her away. She wants to be a teacher like her mama was, Dwayne said. Says she wants to help kids learn to love reading. Even now, sick as she is, she goes to the library twice a week to read stories to the little ones. Michael made his decision in that moment. This wasn't about charity or obligation. This was about family. This was about keeping a promise he'd made 40 years ago to always be there for his brother. Dwayne, he said, I want to help. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Michael wondered if the call had been dropped. MJ? Dwayne finally whispered. I'm here. And I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to get Zara the treatment she needs. Michael heard Dwayne start to cry. Deep, grateful sobs that came from somewhere beyond words. Thank you, Dwayne managed to say. Thank you, brother. Don't thank me yet, Michael said. We've got work to do. I want to talk to her doctors. I want to understand exactly what this treatment involves. And I want to meet Zara. You want to meet her? Of course I do. She's your daughter. That makes her family to me too. As they ended the call with plans for Michael to visit Wilmington, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in years. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. For the first time in a long time, being Michael Jordan felt less important than being MJ, Dwayne's friend, Dwayne's brother, and now Zara's only hope. 200 miles away in Wilmington, Zara Mitchell sat in her favorite chair at the public library. A circle of 6 children sat cross-legged on the colorful carpet in front of her. Their ages ranged from 4 to 8, and their eyes were wide with wonder, as she read from a picture book about a brave little mouse. And the mouse said to the giant cat, Zara read in a dramatic voice, I may be small, but I have a big heart. The children giggled and clapped. 7-year-old Emma raised her hand. Miss Zara, do you really think small things can be brave? Zara smiled, though the effort made her tired. I think being brave has nothing to do with how big you are on the outside. It's about how big your heart is on the inside. Like you? Asked Tommy, a shy 6-year-old who barely spoke above a whisper. Zara's heart melted. These children had no idea she was sick. To them, she was just Miss Zara, the nice lady who read them stories twice a week and always remembered their name. We're all brave in our own ways, she said gently. Now who wants to hear another story? After story time ended and the children left with their parents, Zara walked slowly to the front desk. Mrs. Chen, the head librarian, looked at her with concern. "You look tired today, dear," Mrs. Chen said. "Maybe you should rest." "I'm okay," Zara said, though she wasn't. The cancer made her exhausted all the time now. Simple things like walking across the room felt like running a marathon. But reading to the children gave her energy in a way that medicine couldn't. "You don't have to keep coming in," Mrs. Chen said kindly. "The children would understand." "But I want to," Zara said. "Those kids look forward to story time. I don't want to let them down." That was Zara in a nutshell. Even while fighting for her own life, she worried more about others than herself. She drove home slowly in her father's old pickup truck. Dwayne had wanted to drive her to the library, but Zara insisted on going alone. She didn't want to be treated like she was helpless, even though some days she felt like she. The small apartment she shared with her father was quiet when she arrived. Dwayne was at his afternoon job, cleaning offices downtown. He worked 3 jobs now, trying to save money for her treatment. It broke Zara's heart to watch him push his 63-year-old body so hard. She made herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. On the wall across from her hung dozens of pictures and newspaper clippings. Her father's Michael Jordan shrine, as she jokingly called it. There were photos from Michael's college days at North Carolina. Articles about his NBA championships. Magazine covers showing him flying through the air with a basketball. In the center of it all was a faded picture of 2 young boys standing beside a basketball hoop. Zara had grown up hearing stories about her father's famous childhood friend. How they played basketball every day after school. How they made a promise to always be brothers. How they lost touch when Michael's family moved away. She used to think her father was exaggerating. Maybe even making the whole thing up. It seemed impossible that Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan, had once been just a regular kid in Wilmington, North Carolina. But as she got older, Zara realized the stories were true. Her father wasn't the type to lie, and he had too many specific details for it to be make-believe. Plus, there was the wooden basketball he kept on his dresser, the one he said Michael had given him before moving away. Sometimes Zara wondered what would have happened if the boys had stayed in touch. Would Michael Jordan remember them if he knew they existed? Would he care that his childhood friend was struggling to pay bills and save his daughter's life? She'd asked her father once why he never tried to contact Michael. Famous people got famous problems, Dwayne had said. They got managers and agents and people trying to get their attention all the time. MJ probably gets 100 letters a day from folks claiming to know him. But you really did know him, Zara had pointed out. 40 years ago, her father had replied. People change. Maybe he wouldn't even remember me. Zara didn't believe that. From all the stories her father told, Michael Jordan, or MJ as her father still called him, sounded like the kind of person who remembered his friends. But she also understood why her father didn't want to reach out. Pride was important to him. He'd rather struggle alone than risk looking like he was begging. That's why Zara had started writing letters to Michael Jordan when she was 10 years old. She never sent them. They were stored in a shoebox under her bed. 12 years worth of birthday letters addressed to someone she'd never met but felt connected to through her father's stories. In those letters, she'd told Michael about her life. About learning to play basketball on the same court where he and her father used to play. About her mother's death and how hard it hit her father. About starting college and her dreams of becoming a teacher. And for the past 2 years, she'd written about her cancer diagnosis and treatment. Dear Mr. Jordan, her most recent letter began. I'm 22 today. My daddy told me you probably won't read this, but I wanted to write anyway. The doctors say my cancer is getting worse. They want to try a new treatment, but it costs more money than we'll ever have. I'm not scared of dying, but I am scared of leaving my daddy alone. He's already lost my mama. I don't want him to lose me too. Maybe that sounds selfish, but it's true. Now, sitting at the kitchen table feeling weaker than ever, Zara wondered if she should finally send one of those letters. Not asking for money, she would never do that. But maybe just to let Michael Jordan know that Dwayne Mitchell's daughter existed, that his childhood friend was still in Wilmington, still proud of him, still telling stories about the boy who became the greatest basketball player of all time. Her phone buzzed with a text from her boyfriend Marcus. How was story time? You feeling okay? Marcus was a good guy. They'd met in college before her diagnosis, and he'd stuck with her through everything. The chemotherapy that made her lose her hair, The radiation that left her too tired to go out. The hospital stays that scared both of them. Story time was great, she texted back. The kids loved the mouse book. Feeling tired but good. Want me to come over? I can bring dinner. Daddy should be home soon. Maybe tomorrow? Love you, Z. Love you too. Zara set down her phone and looked at the Michael Jordan shrine again. In one magazine article she'd read a quote from him. I've always believed that if you put in the work, if you never give up, you can achieve anything. That quote had gotten her through the darkest days of her treatment, when the chemo made her so sick she couldn't get out of bed, when the radiation burned her skin, when the doctors delivered bad news after bad news. She'd put in the work, she'd never given up. But sometimes, no matter how hard you tried, you needed help from somewhere else. Zara heard her father's truck pulling into the parking lot. She quickly wiped away the tears she hadn't realized were falling. Dwayne worried about her enough already. She didn't want him to know how scared she was getting. The door opened and her father walked in, looking exhausted. His work clothes were dirty and his back was clearly hurting, but he smiled when he saw her. How was story time, he asked. Just like he did every Tuesday and Thursday.
Good,
she said. Tommy actually spoke up today, asked if small things could be brave. Smart kid, Dwayne said, hanging his coat on the door. What did you tell him? That being brave comes from having a big heart, not a big body. Dwayne nodded approvingly. Sounds like something your mama would have said. They made dinner together, just pasta and sauce. But it felt special, because they were together. Dwayne told her about his day cleaning offices. Zara told him about the children at the library. Neither of them mentioned the cancer. Neither talked about the experimental treatment they couldn't afford. Neither brought up the fact that time was running out. But as they sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, surrounded by pictures of a basketball star who used to be just a boy from their neighborhood, both of them were thinking the same thing. Sometimes miracles came from the most unexpected places. What they didn't know was that 300 miles away, that miracle was already putting on his coat and getting ready to drive to Wilmington to meet them. But first, Michael had to deal with the people who managed his life. His financial advisor, Robert Kim, sat across from Michael's desk with a serious expression. $800,000 is nothing to you financially, Robert said. But this sets a dangerous precedent. Word gets out that you helped one childhood friend, and suddenly everyone you ever knew will come forward with their hand out. Michael's lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, nodded in agreement. We've seen this before with other wealthy clients. One act of generosity opens the floodgates. Before you know it, you're getting calls from every person who ever sat next to you in elementary school. This is different, Michael said firmly. Dwayne isn't some random person trying to take advantage. He's family. Family you haven't spoken to in 40 years, Robert pointed out. Michael, I understand you feel emotional about this, but you need to think logically. How do you know this story is even true? That stung. Michael had wondered the same thing himself, but hearing someone else question Dwayne's honesty made him angry. Because I know him, Michael said. Dwayne Mitchell isn't capable of lying about something like this. People change in 40 years, Jennifer said gently. The boy you knew might not be the same man who wrote that letter. Michael's business manager, David Santos, pulled out a thick folder. I did some research after you told us about the letter. Dwayne Mitchell has no criminal record, but he's filed for bankruptcy twice. He's had his truck repossessed. He's been evicted from 2 apartments in the past 5 years. Because he's poor, Michael said. That doesn't make him dishonest. It makes him desperate, David replied. And desperate people sometimes do things they wouldn't normally do. Michael stood up and walked to his window. Chicago stretched out below him, a city where he was treated like royalty everywhere he went. But right now, he felt more alone than ever. These people, his advisors, his team, they were trying to protect him. He knew that. They'd seen too many wealthy clients get taken advantage of by people claiming to be old friends or distant relatives. It was their job to be suspicious. But they didn't understand what Dwayne had meant to him. They hadn't been there for those summer days when a poor kid from the wrong side of town taught a middle-class boy about loyalty and courage. I want to hire a private investigator, Michael said finally. Someone to verify the story. Check on the daughter, the cancer diagnosis, the medical bills. Everything. Robert looked relieved. That's a smart move. We can recommend someone discreet. Good, but I'm also going to visit them. Tomorrow. Jennifer frowned. Michael, that's not wise. If you show up in person, it creates expectations. What if the investigation proves the story isn't true? You'll have given them false hope. And what if it proves the story is true? Michael shot back. Then I'll have wasted time while a 22-year-old girl gets sicker. The room fell silent. Michael knew his team meant well, but sometimes their caution frustrated him. They saw every human interaction as a potential lawsuit or public relations disaster. After his advisors left, Michael sat alone in his office. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out his phone to call his wife. "Yvette? It's me. Hey baby, how did the meeting go with your team?" Michael had told his wife about Dwayne's letter the night before. Unlike his business advisors, Yvette had encouraged him to help. "They think I'm being naive," Michael said. "They want me to have Dwayne investigated before I do anything." "Are you going to?" "Yes. But I'm also going to Wilmington tomorrow to meet them." Yvette was quiet for a moment. "What does your heart tell you?" That was one of the things Michael loved about his wife. She always cut through the noise and asked the questions that mattered. "My heart tells me that Dwayne is telling the truth. That his daughter is dying, and I can help save her. Then that's what you should do. Even if my advisors think it's a mistake. Especially if your advisors think it's a mistake," Yvette said with a laugh. "Honey, you've spent your whole life making smart business decisions. Maybe it's time to make a decision with your heart." After hanging up with his wife, Michael drove home to his mansion in Highland Park. The house was enormous. 12 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a basketball court, a swimming pool. He owned homes in other cities too. Cars worth more than most people's houses, watches that cost more than some people made in a year. But as he walked through the empty rooms, Michael felt the loneliness that came with extreme wealth. Yes, he had money. More money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. But genuine friendships from his past felt like precious treasures that he'd let slip away. He went to his study and sat at his desk. On the corner, next to a photo of his children, sat the wooden basketball Dwayne had carved for him 40 years ago. The wood was smooth now from years of Michael running his fingers over it when he was stressed or thinking. "Brothers forever," he read aloud, tracing the carved letters with his finger. Michael picked up his phone and called Dr. Sarah Kim, his therapist. He'd been seeing her for 3 years, ever since his divorce from his first wife. She helped him deal with the pressures of fame and the difficulty of trusting people's motives. "Michael," Dr. Kim said when she answered. "This is unexpected. Is everything all right?" "I need to talk to someone," Michael said. "Can you spare a few minutes?" "Of course. What's going on?" Michael told her about Dwayne's letter, about the sick daughter, about his team's concerns. Dr. Kim listened without interrupting. "What are you feeling right now?" she asked when he finished. "Guilty," Michael said immediately. "While I was becoming famous and rich, my best friend was struggling just to survive. I could have done more over the years to stay in touch." "Could you have? Really?" Michael thought about it. "I don't know, maybe. I had handlers screening my calls and mail from early in my career. But I could have tried harder to find him." "Why didn't you?" "Because it was easier not to," Michael admitted. "Staying connected to my past meant staying connected to the person I used to be. The scared kid who wasn't sure he was good enough. Fame let me become someone else entirely." "And who did you become?" "Michael Jordan. The brand. The icon. The guy who never showed weakness or doubt." "But Dwayne knew MJ," Dr. Kim said gently. "The boy who missed free throws and worried about fitting in." "Exactly. With Dwayne I couldn't hide behind the image. I'd just be..." "Is that scary?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. "Terrifying." "Why?" "Because what if I'm not enough? What if the boy he remembers doesn't exist anymore? What if 40 years of fame and money have turned me into someone he wouldn't even like?" Dr. Kim's voice was gentle. "Michael, from what you've told me about this man, do you think he reached out to you because of your money?" "No," Michael said immediately. "Dwayne would never do that." "Then why did he reach out?" "Because he needed help, and I was the only person he could think of who might be able to provide it. Not Michael Jordan, the celebrity. MJ, his friend." Michael felt tears in his eyes. His brother. "So maybe this isn't about whether you're still the same person. Maybe it's about whether you're willing to honor the relationship that helped make you who you are." After the session, Michael sat in his study for a long time. He looked at pictures from his career, championship trophies, MVP awards, moments of glory that had defined his public life. But then he looked at the wooden basketball again. Such a simple thing, carved by a 13-year-old boy who had nothing to give except his friendship. Yet it had meant more to Michael than any trophy or award. His phone buzzed with a text from Robert Kim. "I've contacted Rebecca Torres. She's the best private investigator in the business. She can start tomorrow." Michael texted back. "Good. Tell her to meet me in Wilmington. I'm driving down first thing in the morning." His phone immediately rang. It was Robert. "Michael, we talked about this. You shouldn't go until after the investigation." "I'm going," Michael said firmly. "With or without the investigation. Dwayne is my friend, and his daughter is dying. I'm not going to wait for a stranger to tell me whether they deserve my help. This could backfire," Robert warned. "If word gets out, every person with a sob story will come looking for you. Then we'll deal with that when it happens," Michael said. "But I'm not going to let fear stop me from doing what's right." After hanging up, Michael went upstairs and packed a small bag. He hadn't been back to Wilmington in 40 years. Part of him was nervous about what he'd find there. Would the town have changed completely? Would Dwayne be the same person he remembered? But a bigger part of him was excited. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. Not for his brand or his business empire, but for the people who had helped shape who he was. As he got ready for bed, Michael looked at himself in the mirror. Tomorrow, he wouldn't be Michael Jordan, the basketball legend. He would just be MJ, driving home to see his oldest friend and meet the daughter who needed a miracle. And maybe, just maybe, he needed this miracle as much as they did. The next morning, Michael drove his black BMW toward Wilmington while Rebecca Torres flew in from Atlanta. She was known as the best private investigator in the Southeast. Someone who could uncover the truth about anyone in 48 hours or less. Rebecca had worked for celebrities, politicians, and business leaders. She'd exposed fake relatives trying to claim inheritances. She'd uncovered lies about children who weren't really sick. She'd seen every scam and sob story imaginable. That's why Michael's team had hired her. They needed someone who wouldn't be fooled by a sad story or swayed by emotion. Rebecca rented a car at the Wilmington airport and drove straight to Green Meadows, the neighborhood where Dwayne Mitchell lived. It was exactly what she expected. Old apartments with peeling paint, broken sidewalks, and cars that had seen better days. She parked across the street from Dwayne's building and watched. This was how investigations started, by observing without being seen. At exactly 6:30 a.m., a man in his 60s walked out of the building. He was tall but bent slightly forward, like someone whose back hurt. He wore work clothes and carried a lunchbox. He got into an old pickup truck that started on the third try. Rebecca followed him to downtown Wilmington, where he parked behind an office building. She watched him put on a janitor's uniform and use a key to enter through the back door. Her first stop was the hospital where Zara Mitchell was supposedly being treated. Rebecca had learned that medical records were private, but there were always ways to verify information if you knew how to ask the right questions. "I'm doing a background check for a potential employer," Rebecca told the receptionist in the cancer center. "Can you confirm that Zara Mitchell has been a patient here?" "I'm sorry, but we can't release patient information," the receptionist said. "I understand. I'm not asking for details. Just confirmation that she's been treated here for cancer." The receptionist looked uncomfortable. "I really can't say anything." But Rebecca noticed something. When she mentioned Zara's name, the receptionist's expression changed. There was recognition there, and sadness. You couldn't fake that kind of reaction. Rebecca's next stop was Willington High School, where she'd learned that Dwayne's wife Rosa had taught before her death. "Oh my goodness." "Yes," said Mrs. Patterson, the current principal. "Rosa Mitchell was one of our best teachers. Such a tragedy when she died. That poor family has been through so much." "What do you mean?" Rebecca asked. "First Rosa in that terrible car accident, and now Zara with her cancer. That girl used to volunteer here even after she graduated. Helped with our reading program. Haven't seen her much lately though. I assume she's too sick." Mrs. Patterson's eyes filled with tears. "Dwayne is such a good man. Works multiple jobs trying to pay for Zara's treatment. I wish there was more we could do to help." Rebecca left the school with a growing sense that the Mitchell family's story was genuine. But she needed more proof. She drove to the public library and found Mrs. Chen, the head librarian. "Zara?" Mrs. Chen said when Rebecca asked about her. "She's wonderful with the children. Volunteers twice a week for story time, even though she's clearly not feeling well." "What do you mean?" "She tries to hide it, but you can see she's sick. She gets tired easily, and she's lost a lot of weight, but she never misses her volunteer days, unless she's in the hospital. She's in the hospital often? Mrs. Chen nodded sadly. For chemotherapy treatments. The children always ask where Mrs. Zara is when she's not here. They love her so much. Rebecca's investigation continued throughout the day. She spoke to neighbors, store clerks, and former co-workers. The same picture emerged everywhere she went. Dwayne? He's the best neighbor anyone could ask for, said Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived in the apartment next to his. When my husband had his heart attack last year, Dwayne drove me to the hospital and stayed there all night. Wouldn't let me sit alone. He fixed my car for free when I couldn't afford to take it to a mechanic, said James Washington, a young man who lived downstairs. Didn't want any money for it, said neighbors help neighbors. That man has helped half the kids in this neighborhood, added Sarah Thompson, a single mother of 3. Coached my son's Little League team for 2 years. Never asked for anything in return. Rebecca visited the elementary school where Rosa Mitchell had taught. The current teachers all remembered her fondly, and they knew about Dwayne's struggles since her death. He comes to every school event that Zara can't attend, said Miss Johnson, a second-grade teacher. Parent-teacher conferences, graduation ceremonies, fundraisers. He says Rosa would want him to stay connected to the school community. What about Zara? Rebecca asked. She's been volunteering here since she was in high school. Even with her cancer treatments, she tries to help with our literacy program. The children adore her. By evening, Rebecca had a clear picture of the Mitchell family. Everything Dwayne had told Michael Jordan was true. The medical bills were real. The financial struggles were real. The cancer was real. But Rebecca had also discovered something Dwayne hadn't mentioned in his letter to Michael. She found it while talking to Dr. Martinez, Zara's oncologist. Rebecca had convinced the doctor's nurse that she was from a charitable foundation considering helping with Zara's treatment costs. The family has been through so much, the nurse confided. Not just the cancer and the medical bills. Mr. Mitchell was recently diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. Rebecca's heart skipped a beat. Alzheimer's? It's still in the early stages, so he's mostly functional. But the stress of Zara's illness seems to be making it progress faster. He sometimes forgets appointments or gets confused about dates. Does Zara know? Oh yes. She's been taking care of everything. Managing his medications, keeping track of his doctor appointments, making sure he eats properly. All while dealing with her own cancer treatments. Rebecca sat in her rental car outside the medical building, processing this information. Dwayne Mitchell wasn't just a father trying to save his daughter's life. He was a man slowly losing his memory while watching his child die. She drove to the old basketball court behind Dwayne's apartment complex. It was the same court where Michael Jordan and Dwayne Mitchell had played as children, though it was in terrible condition now. The hoop was rusty and crooked. Weeds grew through cracks in the concrete. A few teenagers were shooting baskets despite the poor conditions. Rebecca asked them if they knew Dwayne Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell? Yeah, he's cool, said a boy who looked about 15. He sometimes comes out here and tells us stories about playing basketball with Michael Jordan when they were kids. Do you believe those stories? Rebecca asked. The teenagers laughed. Nah, probably not. But Mr. Mitchell's a good dude, so we listen anyway. He brings us water bottles when it's hot and helps us fix the hoop when it breaks. He's been having some problems lately though, added a girl with braids. Sometimes he forgets our names or asks us the same questions twice. My grandma does that too. It's sad. Rebecca spent the evening in her hotel room writing her report. She'd investigated hundreds of people over the years looking for lies, inconsistencies, and hidden motives. But Dwayne Mitchell was exactly who he claimed to be, a good man facing an impossible situation. The next morning she drove to the office building where Dwayne worked as a janitor. She waited outside until he finished his shift at 2. Rebecca watched him drive across town to a landscaping company, where he spent the afternoon doing yard work despite his back problems. At 6 p.m. he drove to a fast food restaurant for his third job, delivering food orders. She followed him on 3 deliveries, watching him struggle to get in and out of his truck because of his back pain. But he was polite to every customer and never complained. When his shift ended at 9 p.m., Dwayne drove home to his apartment. Rebecca saw him climb the stairs slowly, clearly exhausted. Through the window she watched him check on Zara, who was lying on the couch reading a book. They talked for a few minutes, and Rebecca could see the love between them even from a distance. Rebecca had seen enough. She called Michael Jordan that night. "I finished my investigation," she said. "Everything Dwayne Mitchell told you is true. The daughter has cancer. The medical bills are real. The family has sold everything trying to pay for treatment." "And?" Michael asked. "And there's something else. Something Mr. Mitchell didn't tell you." Rebecca explained about Dwayne's Alzheimer's diagnosis, about how he was slowly losing his memory while trying to save his daughter's life. Michael was quiet for a long moment. "How long does he have before he forgets you entirely? Maybe a year or two if we're lucky. The stress of Zara's illness is making it progress faster than usual. So when he wrote to me, he was fighting to hold on to the memory of his best friend while there was still time." Rebecca finished. "Mr. Jordan, I've investigated a lot of people. Most of them are lying about something. But Dwayne Mitchell is the most honest person I've ever encountered. He's not trying to take advantage of you. He's desperate to save his daughter before his mind can't remember why it matters." After hanging up, Michael sat in his hotel room in Wilmington staring at the wooden basketball Dwayne had carved for him 40 years ago. Tomorrow, he would meet Zara Mitchell and see his old friend again. But now he understood the urgency in Dwayne's letter wasn't just about medical bills or cancer treatments. It was about a man racing against time to save his daughter before he forgot who she was. Michael didn't sleep that night. He sat by the window of his hotel room, looking out at the Wilmington skyline. Somewhere in this city, his childhood best friend was losing his memory while his daughter fought for her life. At 6 a.m., Michael called Rebecca Torres. "I need you to arrange something," he said. "I want to pay for Zara's treatment. All of it. The experimental therapy, the travel costs, everything." "Are you sure?" Rebecca asked. "This is a big decision. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "What about your advisors?" "They wanted you to wait." Michael looked at the wooden basketball on his nightstand. "Some things are more important than business advice." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Jordan, there's something else you should know. I spent yesterday watching this family, and I've never seen people care for each other the way they do. Zara takes care of her father like he's a child sometimes, making sure he takes his medicine and remembers to eat. And he works 3 jobs even though his back is killing him and his mind is starting to fail. They're good people," Michael said. "The best. But I also think you should know, they're not going to accept charity easily. They have too much pride for that." Michael understood. Dwayne had always been proud, even as a kid. He'd rather go hungry than ask for help. "Then I'll have to convince them it's not charity," Michael said. "It's what friends do for each other." At 8 a.m. Michael called Dwayne. His old friend answered on the second ring. "MJ, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, I'm in Wilmington. I drove down yesterday." "You're here? In town?" "At the Hampton Inn on Market Street. I was hoping we could meet today. And I'd like to meet Zara if that's okay." There was silence on the other end. Michael could hear Dwayne breathing, maybe trying not to cry. "You came all this way," Dwayne said finally. "Of course I did. You're my brother, remember?" They arranged to meet at the old basketball court behind Dwayne's apartment at 10 a.m. Michael arrived early and sat on the bleachers, looking at the place where their friendship had been born. The court was in worse shape than he'd expected. The concrete was cracked and broken. Weeds grew through the pavement. The hoop was rusty and hung at an odd angle. But as Michael sat there, he could see it the way it used to be. He could almost hear the sound of basketballs bouncing and teenage boys laughing. He could picture 2 13-year-olds making a promise to always be brothers. At exactly 10 a.m., Dwayne's pickup truck pulled into the parking lot. Michael's heart pounded as he watched his old friend get out of the car. Dwayne had aged, of course. His hair was gray and thinning. His face was lined with wrinkles. He moved slowly, like someone whose body had worked hard for many years. But when he saw Michael, his face lit up with the same smile that had made them friends 50 years ago. "MJ," Dwayne said, walking toward him with tears in his eyes. "D-Train," Michael replied, standing up from the bleachers. They hugged each other tight. 2 old men remembering the boys they used to be. "I can't believe you're really here," Dwayne said. "I can't believe it took me 40 years to come back." They sat on the bleachers together, looking at the broken basketball court. "Remember when we thought this was the most beautiful place in the world?" Dwayne asked. "It was beautiful," Michael said, "because we were here together." They talked for an hour about their memories, about the games they'd played and the dreams they'd shared, about the promise they'd made in the years that had passed since then. Finally, Michael brought up the real reason he was there. "Dwayne, I want to help Zara. I want to pay for her treatment. Dwayne's face changed. The joy left his eyes, replaced by something that looked like shame. MJ, I can't let you do that. It's too much money. It's not about the money. $800,000? That's a fortune to people like us. Michael turned to face his old friend. Dwayne, do you remember what you told me the day before I moved away? You said that no matter where I went or how famous I got, I'd always have a brother in Wilmington who believed in me. I remember. Well, now you have a brother in Chicago who believes in you. And in Zara. This isn't charity, D-Train. This is family taking care of family. Dwayne wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I don't know how I'd ever pay you back. You don't have to pay me back. You gave me something 40 years ago that was worth more than money. You gave me friendship when I needed it most. You taught me how to be a good person. I was just being myself. Exactly. And that's what saved me. Do you know how many fake friends I've had over the years? People who only wanted to be around me because I was famous? But you liked me when I was just a skinny kid who couldn't make his free throws. Dwayne smiled through his tears. You got better at free throws. Because you pushed me to practice. Because you never let me give up. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching some teenagers play basketball on the broken court despite its condition. Those kids remind me of us. Dwayne said. They do. Full of dreams and hope. MJ, there's something I need to tell you. About my health. Michael's heart sank. He knew what was coming, but he let Dwayne say it in his own way. I've got Alzheimer's. Early stages, but it's getting worse. Some days I forget things. Important things. I'm sorry, Michael said softly. The doctors say stress makes it progress faster, and watching Zara get sicker. Dwayne's voice broke. I'm scared, MJ. I'm scared I'm going to forget her. Forget how much I love her. Forget who she is. Michael put his arm around his old friend's shoulders. That's not going to happen. We're going to get Zara the treatment she needs. She's going to get better. Then you're going to have more time with her. You really think so? I know so, because we're not giving up. You taught me that, remember. Never give up no matter how hard things get. Dwayne nodded, hope returning to his eyes. Now, Michael said, I want to meet this amazing daughter of yours. They drove to the apartment in Dwayne's truck. Michael noticed that his friend seemed confused about which streets to take, even though he'd lived in the neighborhood for decades. The apartment was small and humble, but clean and filled with love. Pictures of Rosa and Zara covered the walls. In one corner sat a small table covered with Michael Jordan newspaper clippings and magazine covers. Zara, Dwayne called out. Come meet someone special. A young woman walked out of the back bedroom, and Michael's breath caught. She was thin from the cancer treatments, then she'd lost her hair to chemotherapy. But she had her father's warm eyes and her mother's gentle smile. Zara, Dwayne said proudly. This is MJ. My best friend from when we were kids. Zara's eyes went wide. You mean, you're really Michael Jordan? Michael smiled. I'm really MJ, your daddy's brother. I can't believe this, Zara said, sitting down heavily on the couch. Daddy's been telling me stories about you my whole life. I thought maybe he was making some of them up. Every story is true, Michael said. Your father was the best friend I ever had.
He still talks about you all the time. He saved every newspaper article about your career.
Michael looked at Dwayne, who was beaming with pride. Zara, Michael said gently, your father told me about your illness. I want to help. I want to pay for your treatment in Houston. Zara's face went pale. Mr. Jordan, that's incredibly generous, but we can't accept that. It's too much. It's not Mr. Jordan. It's Uncle MJ. And yes, you can accept it, because that's what family does. Zara looked at her father, then back at Michael. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I don't understand why you would do this for us. Michael sat down next to her on the couch. Your father saved my life when we were kids. Not literally, but in every way that mattered. He taught me about loyalty and kindness, and never giving up. Those lessons made me who I am today. Everything good I've accomplished started with what your father taught me. But that was so long ago. Some friendships don't have an expiration date, Michael said. Some promises last forever. He pulled the wooden basketball from his jacket pocket. Zara gasped when she saw it.
Daddy, is that
the basketball I carved for MJ before he moved away, Dwayne said softly. I can't believe you kept it all these years. I've carried it with me everywhere, Michael said. Through every game, every championship, Every important moment of my life. It reminded me that I had a brother who believed in me. Zara reached out and touched the carved wood gently. "Brothers forever," she read. "That's right," Michael said. "And that includes you now. You're part of this family too." For the first time since her diagnosis, Zara allowed herself to hope. Maybe she really would survive this. Maybe she really would get to become a teacher like her mother. Maybe miracles really did happen. "When do we leave for Houston?" she asked. Michael smiled. "As soon as I can arrange everything. The best doctors, the best treatment, the best chance for you to beat this thing." As they sat together in the small apartment, a basketball legend, a man losing his memory, and a young woman fighting for her life, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. They were family, and family took care of each other, no matter what. 3 weeks later, Zara was settled into her room at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. The experimental treatment had begun, and the early signs were promising. Michael had arranged for the best doctors, a private room, and around-the-clock care. He'd also set up a small apartment nearby for Dwayne, so he could be close to his daughter during treatment. Every morning, Dwayne would walk to the hospital and sit by Zara's bedside, holding her hand and telling her stories about the old days. Michael flew to Houston twice a week to check on them. He brought books for Zara to read, and made sure Dwayne was taking his own medications for the Alzheimer's. Everything was going perfectly, until Tuesday morning when everything changed. Michael was in his Chicago office when Maria rushed in with her phone in her hand. "Mr. Jordan, you need to see this," she said, her face pale with worry. She showed him a news story on her phone. The headline read, "Michael Jordan secretly paying for cancer treatment of childhood friend's daughter." Michael's heart sank as he read the article. Someone had leaked the story to a local Houston news station. The reporter had somehow found out about Zara's treatment and Michael's involvement. "How did they find out?" Michael asked.
"I don't know," Maria said, "but it's spreading fast. It's already on 3 national news websites."
Michael's phone started ringing immediately. His publicist, his business manager, his lawyer. Everyone wanted to know how to handle the situation. "Should we deny it?" asked his publicist, Jennifer Martinez. "Absolutely not," Michael said firmly. "I'm not going to lie about helping a friend." "Then how do you want to handle this?" Michael thought for a moment. "We don't say anything, no comment. This is a private family matter." But the media had other ideas. By noon, the story was everywhere. Television news shows, newspaper websites, social media platforms. Everyone was talking about Michael Jordan's secret act of kindness. At first, the coverage was positive. News anchors called it heartwarming. Social media users shared the story with hearts and crying emojis. People called Michael a hero for helping his childhood friend. "This is beautiful," one person tweeted. "Michael Jordan shows what true friendship means. Loyalty matters," wrote another. "MJ never forgot where he came from." But then investigative reporter Amanda Chen from the Washington Herald decided to dig deeper. Amanda was known for her hard-hitting journalism. She didn't just report stories, she investigated them. And something about Michael Jordan's sudden generosity made her curious. She flew to Houston and started asking questions at the hospital. She interviewed other families dealing with cancer costs. She looked into Michael's charitable giving over the years. What Amanda discovered changed the entire narrative. Her article, published 3 days after the original story broke, was titled "The Jordan Standard: Who Deserves Help and Who Doesn't." In the piece, Amanda revealed that Michael Jordan received hundreds of requests for help every year. Letters from families with sick children, calls from former teammates facing financial hardship, emails from people who claimed connections to his past. According to sources close to Jordan's management team, Amanda wrote, "The basketball legend turns down the vast majority of these requests. His representatives screen all appeals for help, and very few make it to Jordan himself." The article went on to detail specific cases of people who had been denied help. Parents whose children had died because they couldn't afford treatment. Former high school teammates who had struggled with poverty while Jordan accumulated billions. Janet Washington of Wilmington, North Carolina, says her son Raymond played basketball with Jordan in high school. Amanda wrote, "For 10 years Washington wrote letters asking Jordan to help pay for Raymond's college tuition. She never received a response." Charles Murphy, who played professional basketball with Jordan for 2 seasons, says he asked Jordan for help when his son needed heart surgery. Jordan's representatives told him no help was available. Sarah Kim of Chicago says she wrote to Jordan when her daughter was diagnosed with the same type of cancer as Zara Mitchell. She was told that Jordan's charitable foundation wasn't accepting new applications. The article painted a picture of Michael Jordan as someone who helped only when it served his interests or touched his heart personally. The question isn't whether Jordan had the right to help his childhood friend, Amanda concluded. The question is why some people deserve miracles while others don't. What makes Dwayne Mitchell's daughter more worthy of salvation than the hundreds of other children who die because their families can't afford treatment? The article exploded across social media. The hashtag Jordan Standard began trending worldwide. So MJ only helps people when there's a childhood connection. One person tweeted, "What about all the other kids who are dying? This is what's wrong with America," wrote another. "Rich people decide who lives and who dies based on their personal feelings. Michael Jordan could end childhood cancer if he wanted to," posted a third. "Instead, he helps one girl and calls it charity." The criticism was harsh and personal. People called Michael selfish, heartless, and out of touch. They accused him of caring more about his image than about saving lives. Michael watched the coverage from his hotel room in Houston, feeling sick to his stomach. He'd never wanted this attention. He just wanted to help his friend's daughter. "Turn off the TV," Dwayne said from the chair beside Zara's hospital bed. "Don't listen to those people. But they're right about some things," Michael said quietly. "I do turn down most requests for help. I can't save everyone." "Nobody expects you to save everyone," Zara said weakly from her bed. The treatment was making her tired, but she was getting stronger every day. "Apparently they do," Michael replied, scrolling through the angry comments on his phone. The controversy grew worse when other celebrities started weighing in. Some defended Michael, saying he had the right to choose how to spend his money. Others criticized him for being selective with his generosity. "Rich people help their friends all the time," said actor David Santos in a TV interview. "Why is this different?" "Because children are dying," responded activist Maria Rodriguez. "When you have the power to save lives and you choose not to, that's a moral failing." The debate raged for days. Talk radio shows discussed it. Cable news programs devoted entire segments to it. Social media platforms were flooded with arguments about wealth, charity, and moral responsibility. Some people shared stories of their own experiences asking wealthy people for help. Others defended the right of rich individuals to choose their own charitable causes. "Michael Jordan doesn't owe anybody anything," wrote one supporter. "He earned his money, and he can spend it however he wants. When kids are dying and you have billions of dollars, you absolutely owe something," countered a critic. "Wealth comes with responsibility." The story took on a life of its own. News programs brought in experts to discuss the ethics of selective charity. Philosophers debated the moral obligations of the ultra-wealthy. Economists analyzed the impact of private charity versus government programs. Through it all, Michael felt like he was trapped in a nightmare. Every interview request felt like a trap. Every statement could be twisted or misunderstood. His advisors urged him to go on television and defend himself. His publicist wanted him to highlight all the other charitable work he'd done over the years. But Michael refused. This wasn't about his reputation or his image. This was about Zara getting better and Dwayne having more time with his daughter. "Let them say whatever they want," Michael told his team. "I know why I'm here, and that's all that matters." Still, the criticism hurt, especially when it came from people he'd tried to help in the past. "I asked Michael Jordan for help 5 years ago when my daughter needed surgery," former teammate Kevin Williams told a reporter. "His people said no. Now I see him spending close to $1 million on someone he hasn't talked to in 40 years. It makes you wonder what makes some friendships more valuable than others." The comment stung because Michael remembered Kevin's request. His advisors had recommended against helping because Kevin had a history of financial problems and gambling debts. They'd worried the money wouldn't actually go to medical expenses. But seeing Kevin's hurt and anger on television made Michael question his own decision-making process. How many people had he turned away who truly needed help? How many children had suffered because his team was too cautious? The media storm showed no signs of slowing down. Every day brought new articles, new opinions, and new criticism. Michael found himself avoiding social media and news websites entirely. The only bright spot was Zara's progress. The experimental treatment was working. Her cancer markers were dropping, and her strength was returning. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about her chances. "You're going to beat this thing," Michael told her during one of his visits. "I know," Zara said with a smile. But I feel bad that helping me has caused you so much trouble. You didn't cause anything, Michael said firmly. I made a choice to help my family and I'd make the same choice again, even with all the criticism, especially with all the criticism. Some things are more important than what other people think. As Michael sat by Zara's bedside, watching her color return and her energy improve, he realized something important. The media could say whatever they wanted about his choices. Critics could question his motives or his methods. But at the end of the day, a young woman was alive who might not have been without his help. A father was getting to spend precious time with his daughter instead of watching her die. A childhood friendship had been renewed and strengthened. That was worth any amount of criticism or controversy. The question was whether the rest of the world would see it the same way. The answer came quickly, and it wasn't what Michael had hoped for. By the end of the week, the criticism had grown louder and more personal. Social media was filled with angry posts about wealth inequality and the unfairness of selective charity. News programs invited experts to debate whether rich people had moral obligations to help anyone who asked. Michael's phone buzzed constantly with interview requests from reporters who wanted him to defend his choices. His email inbox was flooded with messages from people asking for help with their own medical bills and family crises. This is exactly what I was afraid of, his business manager David Santos said during an emergency meeting in Michael's Chicago office. Now everyone thinks they deserve your help just because they heard about Zara. Maybe they do deserve help, Michael said quietly. His entire team stared at him in shock. Michael, you can't save everyone, his lawyer Jennifer Walsh said. If you try, you'll go broke and still not make a dent in the world's problems. I know that, but maybe I could do more than I have been. The conversation was interrupted by Maria, who knocked on the door and entered with a worried expression. Mr. Jordan, there are reporters outside the building. They want to interview you about the controversy. Michael sighed. Tell them no comment. I already did, but they're not leaving, and there's something else. Charles Murphy is here. He says he needs to talk to you. Charles Murphy. Michael remembered him well. They'd played together on the Chicago Bulls for 2 seasons in the mid-1990s. Charles had been a solid player, not a star but a good teammate and friend. Send him up, Michael said. A few minutes later, Charles walked into the office. He was in his 50s now, with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked nervous but determined. Hey MJ, Charles said quietly. Charles, good to see you. Michael stood up and shook his old teammate's hand. Have a seat. Charles sat down, glancing around at Michael's advisors. Can we talk privately? Michael nodded to his team and they filed out of the office, leaving the 2 former teammates alone. I saw the news about you helping your friend's daughter, Charles said. That was a good thing you did. Thank you. But I also talked to that reporter, Amanda Chen, about how I asked you for help a few years ago when my son Marcus needed heart surgery. Michael's stomach tightened. He remembered that request, and he remembered his team's recommendation to decline. Charles, let me finish, Charles said, holding up his hand. I was angry at first. Really angry. Here you were spending almost $1 million on someone you hadn't talked to in 40 years, while my boy almost died because we couldn't afford the surgery he needed. Michael felt sick. How is Marcus now? He's okay. We found another way to pay for it. Sold our house, borrowed money from family, started a GoFundMe page. It worked out, but barely. I'm sorry, Michael said. I should have helped.
That's what I thought too.
But then I started thinking about it more. Charles leaned forward in his chair. MJ, do you remember when we played together? Do you remember what kind of teammate you were? Michael wasn't sure where this was going. I tried to be a good teammate. You were more than good. You were the best. You pushed all of us to be better. You never gave up on anybody. You made everyone around you stronger. I don't understand. Charles smiled sadly. When I asked you for help, I wasn't asking my old teammate. I was asking Michael Jordan, the famous guy with money. I was treating you like a bank, not like a friend. Michael was quiet, processing what Charles was saying. But your friend Dwayne, he didn't ask Michael Jordan for help. He asked MJ, his brother, the boy he used to play basketball with. That's different, is it? Yeah, it is. Because friendship isn't about money. It's about connection. It's about history. It's about love. Charles stood up. I came here to tell you that I support what you did. And I'm sorry for talking to that reporter. I was hurt, but I was wrong. After Charles left, Michael sat alone in his office for a long time. His old teammates' words had given him a new perspective on the controversy, but they didn't make the criticism any easier to handle. The attacks on social media were getting worse. People were calling him selfish, heartless, and out of touch. They shared stories of children who had died because their families couldn't afford treatment, always with the hashtag Jordan Standard. But there were also supporters, other athletes who understood the pressure of constant requests for help, business leaders who faced similar decisions about charitable giving, regular people who believed that friendship and loyalty mattered. Former Bulls teammate Dennis Rodman surprised everyone by posting a video defending Michael. "I know Mike Jordan better than most people," Dennis said in the video. "He's helped more people than you'll ever know. He just doesn't brag about it. The man has a right to help his friends without being attacked for it." Scottie Pippen, Michael's longtime teammate, also spoke out in support. "Michael Jordan has been quietly helping people for decades," Scottie told a sports reporter. "He pays for college scholarships, medical bills, funeral expenses. He just doesn't announce it to the world." The fact that people are criticizing him for helping a sick girl shows how twisted our society has become. But the negative voices seemed louder. Every day brought new stories of people who felt ignored or rejected by Michael's charitable foundation. Parents shared heartbreaking stories of losing children while Michael Jordan, with his billions of dollars, remained unreachable. "My daughter Emma died of leukemia 3 years ago," wrote one mother on social media. "We tried everything to get help from wealthy people, including Michael Jordan. Nobody responded. Now I see him saving someone else's daughter, and I'm happy for that family. But I can't help wondering why Emma wasn't worth saving too." These stories hit Michael the hardest. He imagined himself in the position of those parents, watching their children die while knowing that somewhere, someone had the money to save them but chose not to help. He called his therapist, Dr. Sarah Kim, for an emergency session. "I feel like I'm drowning," Michael told her. "No matter what I do, it's wrong. If I help everyone who asks, I'll go broke and still not save everyone. If I help only some people, I'm accused of playing God with people's lives. What do you think the real issue is here?" Dr. Kim asked. "I think the real issue is that our society is broken. Why should sick children depend on the charity of wealthy individuals? Why don't we have systems in place to make sure everyone gets the medical care they need?" "That's a fair point, but you can't fix the entire healthcare system. So what am I supposed to do? Just accept that I can't help everyone and ignore the criticism?" Dr. Kim was quiet for a moment. "Michael, tell me why you helped Zara." "Because Dwayne is my friend. Because he asked for help, then I could provide it." "And how do you feel about that decision now?" With all the controversy, Michael thought about Zara, getting stronger every day in her hospital room. He thought about Dwayne, able to spend precious time with his daughter, instead of watching her die. "I feel good about it," he said firmly. "It was the right thing to do." Then maybe that's your answer. You can't save everyone, but you can save the people you're able to save. The criticism hurts, but it doesn't change the fact that you did something good. That evening, Michael flew to Houston to visit Zara and Dwayne. The hospital had increased security because reporters were trying to get access to Zara's room for interviews. "How are you holding up?" Michael asked Dwayne as they sat in the hospital cafeteria. "I'm worried about you," Dwayne said. "All this criticism and anger. Maybe I shouldn't have asked for your help." "Don't you dare say that," Michael said firmly. "You did exactly what you should have done. You asked your brother for help when your daughter was dying. That's not something to be ashamed of. But look what it's caused. People are so angry. People are angry about a lot of things that have nothing to do with us. They're angry about inequality and injustice, and feeling powerless. We just became a symbol for all of that." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the busy hospital around them. Families dealing with their own medical crises. Doctors and nurses working to save lives. The daily drama of life and death that happened mostly away from media attention. "You know what the funny thing is?" Dwayne said eventually. "What?" 40 years ago, when we were kids, you were already helping people. Remember when Billy Thompson was getting picked on by those older boys? You stood up for him even though they were bigger than you." Michael smiled at the memory. "You stood up for him first. I just followed your lead. That's my point. You've always been someone who helps people. The media can say whatever they want, but I know who you really are." As they walked back to Zara's room, Michael felt some of his stress beginning to fade. The criticism still hurt, and the controversy still made him uncomfortable, but he knew in his heart that he'd made the right choice. Some things were more important than public opinion. Some relationships were worth any amount of criticism. And sometimes, being able to save one life was enough, even if you couldn't save them all. 2 months into her treatment in Houston, Zara Mitchell was feeling stronger than she had in years. The experimental therapy was working better than anyone had dared to hope. Her cancer markers were dropping steadily, and her energy was returning. But as her body healed, her heart grew heavy watching the man who had saved her life get attacked by strangers who didn't understand what kind of person he really was. Zara had been following the controversy online, despite her father's attempts to keep her away from social media. She read every article, every angry tweet, every comment calling Michael Jordan selfish or heartless. It made her sick in a way that had nothing to do with cancer. "Uncle MJ," she said one afternoon as Michael sat beside her hospital bed. She'd started calling him that after their first meeting, and it always made him smile. "What's up, kiddo?" "I want to make a video." Michael looked confused. "What kind of video?" "I want to tell people what really happened. I want them to know who you really are." "Zara, you don't need to do that. This controversy will blow over eventually." "But it's not fair," Zara said, her voice getting stronger. "These people are saying terrible things about you, and they don't know anything. They don't know that you call me every single day to check on me. They don't know that you sent me 50 books to read during treatment. They don't know that when I was really sick last week and scared I might die, you flew here in the middle of the night just to sit with me." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "You were scared?" "Of course I was scared. I'm 22 years old. I'm not ready to die. But having you there, having you tell me stories about my daddy when you were kids, it made me feel like everything was going to be okay." "You are going to be okay," Michael said firmly. "The doctors say you're responding beautifully to the treatment." "I know, and that's because of you. Not because of your money, but because of your love. You didn't just write a check and walk away. You became part of our family." Zara sat up in her bed, more determined than ever. "I'm making that video whether you want me to or not. But I'd rather have your blessing." Michael looked at this young woman who had shown more courage in her 22 years than most people showed in a lifetime. She was right. The critics didn't understand the full story. "Okay," he said finally, "but I want to help you write what you're going to say." They spent the next hour crafting Zara's message. She wanted it to be honest, direct, and from the heart. No fancy production, no script written by publicists. Just a sick girl talking about the man who saved her life. The next day, Zara's boyfriend Marcus drove down from North Carolina to visit her. He brought a simple video camera, and they recorded Zara's message in her hospital room. She was wearing a colorful headscarf to cover her bald head from chemotherapy. She looked thin and tired, but her eyes were bright and determined. "Hi," she began, looking directly into the camera. "My name is Zara Mitchell, and I'm the girl at the center of all this controversy about Michael Jordan." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "People are mad at Mr. Jordan for helping me, and I understand why. There are lots of sick people who need help. And it doesn't seem fair that I got chosen just because my daddy used to shoot hoops with a famous person. But here's what those people don't know about Mr. Jordan. He didn't just write a check and walk away. He calls me every day to see how I'm feeling. He sent me books to read during treatment, because he remembered that I work at a library. When I was really sick last week and thought I might die, he flew down here just to sit with me and tell me stories about my daddy when they were kids." Zara's voice got stronger as she continued. "That's not about money, that's about love. And maybe, just maybe, the world needs more love, not less. I've read all the angry comments online. I've seen people say that Mr. Jordan should help everyone or help no one. But that's not how love works. You can't love everyone the same way. You love your family more than strangers. You love your friends more than people you've never met. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. My daddy taught me that there are two kinds of people in the world. People who help when they can, and people who make excuses for why they can't. Mr. Jordan is someone who helps when he can. He's helped my family, but he's also helped lots of other people that you never hear about because he doesn't brag about it." Zara looked directly into the camera, her voice filled with emotion. "To all the people who are angry about this, I want you to know something. I didn't ask Mr. Jordan for help. My daddy did. And he didn't ask because he thought he deserved it, or because he felt entitled to it. He asked because his daughter was dying, and he was desperate. If your child was dying and you knew someone who might be able to help, wouldn't you ask? And if someone you loved as a child came to you for help, wouldn't you try to provide it? I'm not saying everyone should stop being angry about sick kids who don't get help. I'm saying maybe be angry at the right people. Be angry at the systems that make healthcare so expensive that families have to choose between their homes and their children's lives. Be angry at insurance companies that won't pay for treatments that could save lives. Be angry at politicians who talk about healthcare but never fix anything. Don't be angry at someone who saw a way to help and chose to help. Zara's voice softened as she reached the end of her message. Mr. Jordan, if you're watching this, I want you to know that you saved my life. Not just because you paid for my treatment, but because you showed me that there are still good people in the world. People who keep their promises. People who honor their friendships. People who love without expecting anything in return. And to everyone else watching, I want to say this. Instead of being angry about one person getting help, why don't you figure out how to help someone yourself? You don't need to be Michael Jordan to make a difference. You just need to care. The video ended with Zara smiling through tears. Marcus uploaded the video to his social media accounts that evening. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. By the next morning, it was trending on multiple platforms. The response was immediate and overwhelming. "This girl just schooled the entire internet," wrote one commenter. "She's right, we're mad at the wrong person," posted another. "22 years old and wiser than all of us," shared a third. Major news networks picked up the video and played excerpts on their programs. Talk show hosts discussed Zara's message and its impact on the controversy. "This young woman has completely changed my perspective," said one television host. "She's right that we should be angry at systems, not at individuals who choose to help. Zara Mitchell just gave us all a lesson in grace and wisdom," wrote a newspaper columnist. "Maybe we should listen." The video didn't end the criticism entirely, but it shifted the conversation. People began sharing stories of their own acts of kindness, however small. Others talked about systemic changes needed in healthcare and social services. Most importantly, people began to see Michael Jordan not as a symbol of wealth inequality, but as a man who honored a childhood friendship and saved a life in the process. "She's incredible," Michael told Dwayne as they watched the video together in Zara's hospital room. "She gets that from her mama," Dwayne said proudly. "Rosa always could see straight to the heart of things. And from her daddy," Michael added. "You raised an amazing daughter." Zara blushed at the praise. "I just said what needed to be said. I couldn't stand watching people attack you when they didn't understand the real story." "You didn't have to defend me," Michael said. "Yes, I did. You're family. And family protects each other." As the controversy began to die down in the weeks that followed, Zara's video became something more than just a defense of Michael Jordan. It became a call for compassion and understanding in a world that often seemed divided and angry. Teachers showed it in their classrooms, as an example of thoughtful communication. Social workers shared it as a reminder that individual kindness mattered even when systems failed. Parents used it to teach their children about loyalty and gratitude. But for Zara, the video was simply what it had always been. A thank you letter to the man who had saved her life and shown her that promises kept decades apart still had the power to change everything. And in her hospital room in Houston, surrounded by books that Michael had sent and flowers from well-wishers around the world, Zara continued to get stronger every day, proving that sometimes love really was the best medicine of all. 6 months after Zara's video changed the conversation, Michael Jordan sat in his Chicago office reflecting on how much his life had changed. The criticism had mostly faded, replaced by a new understanding of what wealth and friendship could accomplish when combined with genuine care. But the experience had left him thinking deeply about his responsibilities and his legacy. His assistant Maria knocked on the door and entered with a thick folder. "Mr. Jordan, these are the final proposals for the new foundation." Michael opened the folder and reviewed the plans he'd been working on for months. Inspired by the controversy and his renewed friendship with Dwayne, he had decided to create something unprecedented. The Mitchell Foundation, named after Dwayne and Zara, would focus specifically on helping people from Michael's past who needed assistance. Former teammates, childhood friends, people from his hometown, coaches who had influenced him, teachers who had believed in him. "It's not about the money," Michael had explained to his advisors when he first proposed the idea. "It's about honoring the relationships that made me who I am." The foundation would have a simple application process. No complicated paperwork or months of waiting. Just honest requests from people who had been part of Michael's journey, reviewed by a small team that included Michael himself. We'll start with $10 million, Michael told Maria. But I want to keep it simple. If someone from my past needs help, and we can provide it, we will. The idea had come to him during one of his therapy sessions with Dr. Sarah Kim. The criticism hurt because part of it was true, Michael had admitted. I have been selective with my help. I've let my advisors make decisions based on business logic instead of human connection. But you can't help everyone, Dr. Kim had pointed out. No, but I can help the people who helped make me who I am. The coaches who believed in me when I was just a skinny kid. The teammates who pushed me to be better. The friends who knew me before I was famous. Dr. Kim had smiled. That sounds like a way to honor your past while helping your present. Now, as Michael reviewed the foundation documents, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't about managing his image or avoiding criticism. It was about gratitude. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed Dwayne's number. Hey D-Train, how's our girl doing? She's amazing, MJ. Doctor says she's officially in remission. Cancer-free. Michael felt tears in his eyes. After 8 months of treatment, Zara had beaten the disease that had nearly killed her. That's the best news I've heard in years, Michael said. She wants to talk to you, Dwayne said. Hold on, Uncle MJ. Zara's voice was stronger than Michael had ever heard it. I did it. I beat the stupid cancer. You sure did, kiddo. I'm so proud of you. When can I come visit you in Chicago? I want to see your house and meet your family and see where you work. Anytime you want. You and your dad are always welcome. Daddy's doing good too, Zara said. The doctor's changed his medication, and it's helping with the memory stuff. He's been remembering more things from when you were kids. Michael smiled. The Alzheimer's diagnosis had been another reason for urgency in helping Zara. Every day that Dwayne's memory remained clear was a gift. Can I talk to him again? Michael asked. Sure. Love you, Uncle MJ. Love you too, kiddo. Dwayne came back on the line. She's something else, isn't she? She gets it from her dad, Michael said. And her mom. MJ, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. The controversy, the criticism you got, all of it. What about it? I feel responsible. If I hadn't asked for your help— Stop right there, Michael interrupted. You did exactly what you should have done. You asked your brother for help when your daughter was dying. That's not something to regret. But it caused you so much trouble. It caused me to think about what really matters. It helped me understand that friendship and loyalty are worth more than public opinion. Dwayne was quiet for a moment. There's something else. Something I need to tell you about my condition. Michael's heart sank. What is it? The doctors say the stress of Zara's illness made the Alzheimer's progress faster than it normally would. But now that she's better, and now that the stress is gone, they think it might slow down again. That's good news, right? It is. But they also say I should make the most of the time I have left. While my memory is still mostly good. Michael understood what his friend was saying. What do you want to do? I want to come visit you in Chicago. I want to see where you live now. Meet your family. And I want to bring something with me. What? All those newspaper clippings I saved about your career. All the magazine articles and photos. I want to go through them with you and remember everything together. Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion. I'd love that. And MJ? I want to carve you another basketball. My hands are still steady enough. I want to make you a new one, with both our names on it this time. I'd treasure that forever. After the call ended, Michael sat in his office, thinking about the journey that had brought him to this point. A year ago, he'd been a wealthy businessman, managing his empire from a distance. Now he felt more connected to his past and his purpose than he had in decades. The controversy had been difficult, but it had taught him important lessons. You couldn't save everyone, but you could honor the relationships that shaped you. You couldn't please everyone, but you could live according to your value. You couldn't control what people said about you, but you could control what kind of person you chose to be. Most importantly, he'd learned that some friendships transcended time, distance, and even illness. The bond he'd formed with Dwayne as a 13-year-old boy had proven strong enough to weather 40 years of separation and emerge stronger than ever. Michael picked up his phone and called his wife Yvette. How did the foundation meeting go? She asked. Great, we're moving forward with the plans. $10 million to start, but I think we'll need more eventually. I'm proud of you, Yvette said. This feels right. It does. And Yvette? Dwayne called. Zara is officially cancer-free. Oh, Michael, that's wonderful. How are you feeling? Michael looked out his office window at the bustling city below. Somewhere down there, people were struggling with their own problems and challenges. He couldn't help them all, but maybe he could help some of them. Maybe that was enough. I feel grateful, he said finally. Grateful for second chances. Grateful for friendship. Grateful that sometimes, when you do the right thing for the right reasons, everything works out, even when people criticize you for it. Especially then, because that's when you find out who you really are and what you really believe in. That evening, Michael drove home to his mansion in Highland Park. But instead of feeling the loneliness that sometimes came with success, he felt surrounded by love. Love from his wife and children. Love from his oldest friend and his honorary niece. Love from people who understood that wealth without relationships was just numbers on a bank statement. He went to his study and picked up the wooden basketball that Dwayne had carved for him 40 years ago. The wood was smooth from years of handling, and the words "Brothers Forever" were worn but still visible. Soon he would have a new wooden basketball, one that represented not just childhood friendship, but adult commitment to the people who mattered most. One that proved some promises were worth keeping no matter how much time passed or how much life changed. As he held the carved basketball, Michael realized that the controversy had given him something unexpected: clarity about what success really meant. It wasn't about championships or endorsements or wealth. It was about being the kind of person others could count on when it mattered most. And by that measure, he was finally living up to the promise he'd made to a 13-year-old boy in Wilmington, North Carolina. All those years ago, 1 year after Zara's cancer went into remission, Michael stood in the arrivals area of Chicago's O'Hare Airport, waiting for his oldest friend to arrive. It was Dwayne's first time flying in an airplane, and he'd been nervous about the trip for weeks. "You sure this thing is safe?" Dwayne had asked during their phone call the night before. "Safer than your pickup truck," Michael had joked. "That's not saying much," Dwayne had laughed back. Now, as passengers filed out of the gate, Michael spotted them immediately. Dwayne walked slowly, looking around in wonder at the busy airport. Beside him, Zara looked healthy and strong, her hair grown back in soft curls after finishing chemotherapy. "Uncle MJ," Zara called out when she saw him, rushing forward for a hug. "Look at you," Michael said, holding her at arm's length. "You look amazing." "I feel amazing," she said with a bright smile. "Cancer-free for 8 months now." Dwayne approached more slowly, carrying a large duffel bag and looking overwhelmed by the crowd and noise. "Hey, D-Train," Michael said, embracing his old friend. "How was the flight?" "Scary as hell," Dwayne admitted. "But Zara held my hand the whole time." "He only gripped it tight enough to cut off circulation twice," Zara teased. Michael had arranged for them to stay in the guest house on his property for 2 weeks. He wanted to show them Chicago, introduce them to his family, and spend quality time together while Dwayne's memory was still mostly intact. The drive to Michael's house in Highland Park gave Dwayne his first glimpse of how his childhood friend lived now. The mansion was enormous, with perfectly manicured grounds and a view of Lake Michigan. "Holy cow, MJ," Dwayne said as they pulled through the security gates. "This place is like a palace." "It's too big," Michael said honestly. "But it's home." Michael's wife Yvette and their children were waiting to meet their guests. Yvette had heard so many stories about Dwayne over the past year that she felt like she already knew him. "You must be the famous D-Train," she said, giving Dwayne a warm hug. "Michael talks about you constantly." "All lies, I'm sure," Dwayne said with a grin. "Only the good parts," Michael replied. That evening they sat on Michael's back deck, overlooking the lake, sharing dinner and stories. Dwayne had brought the duffel bag full of newspaper clippings and magazines about Michael's career just as he'd promised. "I saved everything," Dwayne said, pulling out yellowed newspaper articles from Michael's college days. "Look at this one from when you hit the shot against Georgetown to win the championship." Michael studied the old photograph of himself as a 19-year-old. Arms raised in victory. "I remember that moment like it was yesterday. I watched it on TV," Dwayne said. "Jumped up and down in my living room like a crazy person. Rosa thought I'd lost my mind." They spent hours going through the clippings. Michael's 6 NBA championships, his MVP awards, his retirement announcements, his comeback attempts. Dwayne had documented it all with the devotion of a loving brother. "Why did you keep all this?" Michael asked. "Because I was proud of you," Dwayne said simply. "You were my friend who made it. You were proof that dreams could come true, even when we weren't in touch. Especially then, when you can't be there for someone in person. You find other ways to support them. This was my way." The next few days were filled with activities Michael had planned. They visited the United Center, where Michael had played his greatest games. They toured the city, ate at Michael's favorite restaurants, and spent time at Navy Pier. But the most meaningful moments were the quiet ones. Sitting in Michael's study, looking through photo albums. Playing one-on-one basketball in Michael's home court, with Dwayne moving slowly but still talking trash like when they were kids. "I may be old and sick," Dwayne said after Michael scored an easy basket, "but I can still school you when it matters." "In your dreams, old man," Michael laughed. Zara watched these interactions with joy and sadness. Joy because her father was having the time of his life. Sadness because she could see the subtle signs of his Alzheimer's progressing. He sometimes forgot names or repeated stories, though he tried to hide it. On their 5th day in Chicago, Dwayne surprised Michael with the gift he'd been working on for months. He pulled a wooden basketball from his bag, this one larger and more detailed than the one he'd carved as a teenager. "I made this for you," Dwayne said, his hands shaking slightly as he held it out. The basketball was beautiful, carved with intricate details. On one side were the words Michael and Dwayne. On the other side, "Brothers forever. Then, now, always." "D-Train, this is incredible," Michael said, turning the basketball over in his hands. "My hands aren't as steady as they used to be," Dwayne said. "But I wanted to make you something special. Something that showed how much our friendship means to me." Michael felt tears in his eyes. "I'll treasure this forever."
I hope so.
"Because there probably won't be another one. The Alzheimer's is getting worse. Some days I forget how to tie my shoes." That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He found Dwayne sitting alone on the deck, looking out at the lake. "Couldn't sleep either?" Michael asked, sitting down beside his friend. "Too much to think about," Dwayne said. "This has been the best week I've had in years. Maybe the best week of my life. Even better than when we were kids. Different kind of good. Back then we didn't know how precious friendship was. We thought we'd have forever." Dwayne was quiet for a moment. "Now I know that time is the most valuable thing we have. How are you feeling about everything?" Michael asked carefully. "Scared," Dwayne admitted. "Not of dying, I'm scared of forgetting. Forgetting Zara's face. Forgetting Rose's laugh. Forgetting you." Michael put his arm around his friend's shoulders. "You won't forget what matters most. Love doesn't live in your memory. It lives in your heart." "You think so?" "I know so. Because even if you forget my name someday, you'll remember that you loved me. That's the part that really matters." On their last day in Chicago, Michael organized a special event. He'd contacted several former teammates and coaches from his playing days, inviting them to meet Dwayne and hear the stories of their childhood friendship. Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Steve Kerr, and Phil Jackson all came to Michael's house for an afternoon barbecue. They listened with fascination as Dwayne told stories about the boy who would become the greatest basketball player of all time. "He used to miss half his free throws," Dwayne told the group. "I had to make him practice until dark every night. That explains a lot," Phil Jackson said with a smile. "Michael always was obsessive about practice. I learned that from D-Train," Michael said. "He taught me that talent without work ethic is just wasted potential." As the afternoon progressed, Michael realized something beautiful was happening. His past and present were coming together in a way that felt natural and healing. The friendships that had shaped him were connecting with the relationships that defined his success. "This is perfect," Zara whispered to Michael as they watched Dwayne regaling the group with another story. "What is?" "Seeing Daddy be the center of attention for once. He spent his whole life being proud of you from a distance. Now he gets to be part of it." That evening, as Michael and his family said goodbye to Dwayne and Zara at the airport, there were tears all around. "Thank you," Dwayne said, hugging Michael tight. "For everything. For saving Zara. For bringing me here. For being my brother. Thank you for never giving up on our friendship," Michael replied. "Even when I did. I never gave up because I knew the real you," Dwayne said. "I knew the boy who stood up for other kids. I knew the teenager who worked harder than anyone else. That person was worth waiting for." As Michael watched their plane disappear into the clouds, he felt a deep sense of gratitude and completion. The controversy that had surrounded his decision to help Zara seemed like a lifetime ago. What mattered now was that a young woman was alive and healthy, and an old friendship had been renewed and strengthened. His phone buzzed with a text from Dwayne, sent from the airplane. "Already miss you, brother. Thank you for the best week of my life." Michael texted back, Thank you for 40 years of friendship. Love you, D-Train. Standing in the airport, surrounded by strangers hurrying to their own destinations, Michael felt more connected to his purpose than ever before. Some relationships were worth any sacrifice. Some promises were meant to be kept forever. And sometimes, the greatest victories happened not on basketball courts, but in the quiet moments when friends chose to love each other. Despite the passage of time, the progression of illness, and the challenges that life inevitably brought. 2 years after Dwayne's letter had arrived on Michael's desk, Michael found himself driving through the familiar streets of Wilmington, North Carolina. But this time, he wasn't coming as a visitor. He was coming home for a celebration. The old basketball court where he and Dwayne had spent countless childhood hours was being officially reopened today. Michael had quietly funded a complete renovation of the court and the surrounding community center. New concrete, professional-grade hoops, fresh paint, and updated facilities. But the most important addition was the bronze plaque near the entrance that read, "Friendship Court, where dreams begin and promises are kept." Michael parked his rental car and walked toward the small crowd that had gathered for the dedication ceremony. The renovation had been kept mostly secret, with only local news covering the story. Michael wanted this to be about the community, not about publicity. "Uncle MJ," Zara's voice called out as she spotted him across the parking lot. She looked radiant, her health completely restored. She was now in her second year of college, studying to become an elementary school teacher just like her mother had been. Her cancer had been in remission for over a year, and her doctors were cautiously optimistic that it wouldn't return. "How's my favorite college student?" Michael asked, giving her a warm hug. "Straight A's so far," she said proudly. "And I start student teaching next semester. Your mom would be so proud." "She would. And so would Daddy. If he..." Zara's voice trailed off, and Michael saw the sadness in her eyes. Dwayne's Alzheimer's had progressed significantly over the past year. There were still good days when his memory was clear, but there were also difficult days when he forgot where he was or couldn't remember the people he loved most. "How is he today?" Michael asked gently. "Better than yesterday," Zara said. "He remembered you were coming, and he's been excited all week. Though he sometimes forgets why." Michael looked across the crowd and spotted Dwayne sitting on a bench near the renovated basketball court. His old friend looked frail and confused, but he was smiling as he watched some teenagers shooting baskets. "Let me go say hello," Michael said. He walked over to the bench and sat down beside Dwayne. His childhood friend looked at him with eyes that showed recognition but uncertainty. "I know you," Dwayne said slowly. "You're someone important." "I'm MJ," Michael said gently. "Your friend." Dwayne's face brightened. "NJ. Of course. We used to play basketball together." "That's right. Right here on this court. You were good. Really good. I always said you'd be famous someday." Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion. Even with his memory fading, Dwayne remembered their friendship and his belief in Michael's potential. "You helped make me who I am," Michael said. Dwayne looked confused for a moment, then smiled. "That's what friends do. They help each other." The dedication ceremony was small but meaningful. The mayor of Wilmington spoke about the importance of community spaces and the generosity of anonymous donors. The head of the community center thanked everyone who had supported the renovation. But the most powerful moment came when they asked Dwayne to cut the ribbon to officially reopen the court. With Zara guiding him gently, Dwayne walked to the ribbon stretched across the court entrance. Michael stood beside him, holding one end of the scissors. "This is where it all began," Michael said loudly enough for the small crowd to hear. "This is where a boy from Wilmington taught me about friendship, loyalty, and never giving up. Today we're not just reopening a basketball court, we're honoring the power of human connection." Together, Michael and Dwayne cut the ribbon. The crowd applauded as children immediately ran onto the renovated court to start shooting baskets. After the ceremony, Michael, Dwayne, and Zara sat on the same bench where the two boys had made their promise 44 years earlier. Dwayne seemed more lucid now, perhaps triggered by being in this familiar place. "I remember this spot," Dwayne said clearly. "This is where we said goodbye before you moved away." "That's right," Michael said, surprised by his friend's sudden clarity. "We cut our hands and promised to be brothers forever." "We did." Dwayne turned to look at Michael directly. "Did we keep that promise?" Michael felt tears in his eyes. "Yes, D-Train. We kept it." "Good," Dwayne said with satisfaction. "That was important to me." They sat in comfortable silence. watching the neighborhood children play on the court they had once claimed as their own. Some things had changed. The boys were now old men, one fighting a disease that was slowly taking his mind. But the essence of their friendship remained strong. "Uncle MJ," Zara said softly, "I have something to show you." She pulled a worn notebook from her purse. Michael recognized it immediately. It was one of the journals she'd written letters to him in as a child. "I found this while cleaning out some boxes," she said. "I want to read you something I wrote when I was 12. She opened to a page near the middle and began to read. "Dear Mr. Jordan, today is my 12th birthday. Daddy told me about the promise you and him made when you were kids. He said you promised to always be brothers, no matter what. I think that's the most beautiful thing I ever heard. I hope someday I find a friend who would make that kind of promise with me. And I hope if I ever need help, my daddy's brother would remember that promises matter. Love, Zara." Michael wiped his eyes. "You were so young, but you understood something important." "I understood that some people keep their word," Zara said. "Even after 40 years. As the afternoon sun began to set, more people from the neighborhood stopped by to see the renovated court. Many of them remembered Michael and Dwayne as children, and they shared stories of their own memories from this place. "This court saved a lot of kids over the years," said Mrs. Patterson, who still lived in the apartment building across the street. "Kids who might have gotten into trouble found something better to do here. That's what we hoped for," Michael said. "That's why we wanted to bring it back." During a quiet moment, Dwayne surprised everyone by standing up and walking onto the court. He picked up a basketball that one of the children had left behind and stood at the free throw line. "I used to be able to make these," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. He took a shot. The ball hit the rim and bounced away. He tried again. This time it went in. "Still got it," he said with a smile that reminded Michael of the 13-year-old boy he'd once known. Michael joined him on the court, and they shot baskets together as they had thousands of times before. Dwayne's movements were slow and uncertain, but his muscle memory occasionally took over, and he would make a shot that reminded everyone watching of the scrappy player he'd once been. "One-on-one?" Dwayne asked with a mischievous look. "You sure about that, old man?" Michael teased. "I can still take you." They played a gentle game, more about laughter than competition. Michael let Dwayne score several baskets, and his old friend celebrated each one as if he'd won a championship. "I beat Michael Jordan," Dwayne called out to Zara, who was recording the game on her phone. "Yes, you did, Daddy," she said, laughing through happy tears. As the day wound down and the crowd began to disperse, Michael found himself alone with Dwayne and Zara on the court where everything had begun. "Thank you," Zara said to Michael. "For everything. For saving my life. For helping Daddy. For giving us this perfect day. Thank you for showing me what really matters," Michael replied. Dwayne sat on the bench, looking tired but content. Michael sat beside him one more time. "D-Train, I want you to know something," Michael said. "You saved my life too." "I did." "Yes. You taught me how to be a good person. How to be loyal. How to keep promises. Everything good I've accomplished started with what you taught me." Dwayne nodded slowly. "That's what friends do." "That's right. That's what friends do." As they prepared to leave, Michael took one last look at the renovated court. The bronze plaque gleamed in the setting sun. "Friendship Court, where dreams begin and promises are kept." It was perfect. It captured everything this place had meant to two boys who became brothers, and everything their friendship had meant to each other across 4 decades of separation and reunion. The court would serve new generations of children now. Other friendships would be formed here. Other dreams would be born on this concrete. But Michael knew that no matter who played here in the years to come, this would always be the place where he learned that some promises were worth keeping forever, and that true friendship could survive anything: time, distance, illness, and even memory loss. As they walked away from Friendship Court for what might be the last time together, Michael felt a deep sense of completion. The circle that had begun with 2 boys making a promise had finally closed with 2 men honoring that promise in ways they could never have imagined. Some stories, Michael realized, were worth living, and some friendships were worth everything. 3 months after the dedication of Friendship Court, Michael received a phone call that would change everything he thought he knew about Dwayne's letter. He was in his Chicago office when Rebecca Torres, the private investigator who had verified Dwayne's story 2 years earlier, called with urgent news. "Mr. Jordan, I need to see you," Rebecca said. "There's something about your friend Dwayne that I discovered during my investigation. Something I didn't think was appropriate to tell you at the time." What kind of something? Michael asked, immediately concerned. It's about his Alzheimer's diagnosis. Can you meet me today? This isn't something I want to discuss over the phone. An hour later, Rebecca sat across from Michael in his office, holding a thick file folder. She looked uncomfortable, like someone about to deliver devastating news. Mr. Jordan, when I investigated Dwayne Mitchell 2 years ago, I discovered that he had been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's disease 6 months before he wrote to you. Michael felt his heart skip a beat. 6 months before?
Yes.
The diagnosis came in January. He wrote to you in July. The disease was still in very early stages then, so he was mostly functional, then lucid. But it explained some things about his letter. Rebecca opened her file and pulled out medical records. I spoke with his doctor's office during my investigation. They told me that Mr. Mitchell had been experiencing some memory issues and confusion about dates and appointments. Michael's mind raced. Are you saying he wrote to me because he was starting to forget things? I'm saying he wrote to you because he was afraid he would forget you entirely if he waited any longer. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. He'd always assumed Dwayne had reached out because of Zara's illness. But the truth was more heartbreaking than he'd ever imagined. There's more, Rebecca continued. During my investigation, I learned that Mr. Mitchell had been keeping newspaper clippings about you not just out of pride, but because he was already beginning to forget details about your friendship. The articles helped him remember the boy he used to know. Michael felt sick. He was losing his memory of me. The early stages of Alzheimer's often affect recent memories first, but they can also impact long-term memories. Mr. Mitchell was fighting to hold on to the most important relationship of his childhood. Rebecca pulled out another document. I also discovered something else. Do you remember that wooden basketball he carved for you when you were 13? Of course, I still have it. Well, Mr. Mitchell has been carving wooden basketballs for the past several years. Not to sell or give away, but because the act of carving helped him remember your friendship when his mind began to wander. Michael's throat tightened. How many basketballs? I found dozens of them in his apartment, all carved with the same words, brothers forever. He would carve one, forget that he'd made it, then carve another one. The revelation was overwhelming. Michael thought about all the times over the past 2 years when Dwayne had seemed confused or forgetful. He'd assumed it was the stress of Zara's illness making his condition worse. But the truth was that Dwayne had been losing pieces of himself, and his most desperate fight was to remember the friendship that had shaped his entire life. Why didn't you tell me this before? Michael asked. Because your friend was still functional, and his daughter was dying. I felt that focusing on his medical condition would distract from what was most important, getting Zara the treatment she needed. But now, Rebecca's expression grew even more serious. Now I think you need to know because his condition has deteriorated faster than anyone expected. Mr. Jordan, I spoke with Zara yesterday. She's concerned that her father is entering the more advanced stages of the disease. Michael immediately called Zara. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting for his call. Uncle MJ, I was just about to call you, she said, her voice thick with worry. What's wrong? It's Daddy. He's getting worse much faster than the doctors predicted. Yesterday he didn't recognize our neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez, even though she's lived next door for 15 years. This morning he asked me who I was. Michael felt his world tilt. He didn't recognize you. For about 10 minutes he looked at me like I was a stranger. Then it passed, and he remembered. But Uncle MJ, I'm scared. What if he forgets me completely? What if he forgets you? I'm coming down there, Michael said immediately. Today. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do. We're family, remember? 4 hours later, Michael was on a plane to Wilmington. During the flight, he couldn't stop thinking about Rebecca's revelation. Dwayne hadn't just written to him because Zara was sick. He'd written because he was running out of time to remember why it mattered. The letter hadn't been just a request for help. It had been a desperate attempt to reconnect with the most important friendship of his life before his mind took that connection away forever. When Michael arrived at Dwayne's apartment, he found his old friend sitting in his chair, staring blankly at the wall. The Michael Jordan shrine was still there. But Dwayne didn't seem to notice it. Hey D-Train, Michael said gently, sitting down across from him. Dwayne looked at him with confused eyes. Do I know you? The words shattered Michael's heart. His best friend, the person who had known him better than almost anyone, was looking at him like a complete stranger. I'm MJ. Michael said softly. We used to play basketball together when we were kids. Dwayne's expression didn't change. I don't remember basketball. Zara appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. It's been like this all day, she whispered. He doesn't remember anything. Not me, not Mama, not our old house. Nothing. Michael felt helpless. All his money, all his success, all his influence. None of it could fight this disease that was stealing his friend's mind piece by piece. But then he remembered something. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the original wooden basketball that Dwayne had carved for him 43 years ago. D-Train, look at this, Michael said, holding the carved basketball where Dwayne could see it. Dwayne's eyes focused on the object. His fingers traced the worn wood, feeling the carved letters. Brothers Forever, Dwayne read slowly. Something flickered in his eyes. A spark of recognition, like a light being turned on in a dark room. I made this, he said quietly. Yes, you did. You made it for me when we were 13 years old. Dwayne looked up at Michael, and suddenly his face changed. The confusion lifted, replaced by the warm smile Michael remembered from their childhood. MJ, Dwayne said clearly. My brother. That's right, I'm your brother. I was scared I'd forgotten you, Dwayne said, tears in his eyes. I was so scared I'd lose you again. Michael knelt beside his friend's chair and took his hand. You didn't lose me. You could never lose me. Even if your mind forgets, your heart remembers. Love doesn't live in memory, D-Train. It lives deeper than that. Promise? Dwayne asked, like the 13-year-old boy he'd once been. Promise, Michael said. Brothers forever, remember? Dwayne smiled and squeezed Michael's hand. Brothers forever. As Michael sat with his oldest friend holding the wooden basketball that had brought back a moment of clarity, he finally understood the true meaning of Dwayne's letter. It hadn't been about money or medicine or even saving Zara's life, though all of those things mattered. It had been about a man fighting against time and disease to hold on to the most precious thing he possessed, the memory of unconditional love and perfect friendship. And in that moment, Michael realized that some connections transcend memory, transcend illness, and transcend even time itself. The letter that had divided the internet and changed both their lives forever hadn't been a request for charity. It had been a love letter from one brother to another, written in desperation but delivered with perfect timing, proving that some promises really do last forever. 1 year later, Michael Jordan sat beside Dwayne's bed in the memory care facility in Wilmington. It was a peaceful place with gardens and comfortable rooms, funded quietly by Michael to ensure his friend received the best possible care. Most days now, Dwayne didn't remember Michael's name. He didn't remember their childhood games or their teenage promises. He didn't remember being a father or a husband, or even his own name sometime. But Michael came anyway. Every week, sometimes more often, he would fly to North Carolina and sit with the man who had taught him everything important about friendship. Hello, D-Train, Michael said softly, pulling his chair closer to the bed. Dwayne looked at him with confused but gentle eyes. Hello, he replied politely, the way you might greet a kind stranger. Michael pulled out the wooden basketball, now worn smooth from years of handling. He placed it in Dwayne's hands and watched as his friend's fingers traced the carved letters, just as they had dozens of times before. This says Brothers Forever. Michael said, You carved this for me when we were 13 years old. Dwayne studied the wooden ball with interest, but no recognition. It's very nice, he said. You were my best friend, Michael continued, even though he knew Dwayne wouldn't remember. You taught me how to be brave, how to stand up for other people, how to never give up. Dwayne smiled, though Michael could tell he didn't understand what was being said. That sounds important. It was the most important thing in my life. These visits had become Michael's way of honoring their friendship, even when it could no longer be returned. Dr. Sarah Kim had helped him understand that love wasn't about being remembered. It was about remembering. The relationship still exists, she had told him. Even if only one person can access the memories, the love is still real. Today was different, though. Today was Dwayne's 66th birthday, and Zara was visiting too. She sat on the other side of her father's bed, holding his other hand. Zara had graduated from college the month before and was starting her first job as a second-grade teacher in the fall. She looked healthy and strong, her cancer now 3 years in remission. The doctors were confident it would never return. Hi, Daddy, she said gently. It's your birthday today. Dwayne looked at her with curiosity. Are you someone I should know? I'm someone who loves you very much, Zara said, tears in her eyes but keeping her voice steady. This was the cruel reality of Alzheimer's. The man who had raised Zara with such devotion, who had worked 3 jobs to try to save her life, who had loved her more than anything in the world, no longer knew who she was. But Zara came anyway. Just like Michael did. Because love didn't require recognition to be real. I brought something to show you, Zara said, pulling out a photo album. These are pictures of your life. She opened to the first page, which showed a young Dwayne with his mother Carmen. Then pictures of him as a teenager, playing basketball and laughing with friends. This is you, Zara explained patiently. This is your story. Dwayne looked at the photos with mild interest, the way someone might flip through a magazine in a waiting room. There was no recognition, no emotional connection to the images of his own life. But when Zara turned to a page showing the old photograph of 13-year-old Michael and Dwayne by the basketball hoop, something changed. Dwayne's fingers touched the photo gently. His breathing became deeper, more focused. I know this place, he said quietly. Michael and Zara exchanged glances. It had been months since Dwayne had recognized anything from his past. What do you remember? Michael asked softly. Basketball, Dwayne said. Playing basketball with someone important. That's right, Michael said. You played basketball with your friend MJ. MJ, Dwayne repeated, as if testing the sound of the name. MJ was good. MJ was your best friend. Then you were his. Dwayne nodded slowly, still staring at the photograph. Friends are important. Yes, they are. Did MJ remember to help people? The question hit Michael like a lightning bolt. Even in his confused state, even with most of his memories gone, Dwayne was still worried about whether his childhood friend had learned the lessons they'd shared. Yes, Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. MJ remembered everything you taught him. He helped lots of people. Good, Dwayne said with satisfaction. That's what friends do. The moment of clarity lasted only a few minutes before Dwayne's attention drifted away again. But it was enough to remind Michael why these visits mattered. Later that afternoon, as Michael and Zara sat in the facility's garden, she shared news that brought their story full circle in an unexpected way. Uncle MJ, I got a letter yesterday, she said. From a family in Texas. Their daughter has the same kind of cancer I had, and they can't afford the experimental treatment. Michael looked at her carefully. What kind of letter? They saw my video from 2 years ago, and they're asking if you might help them the way you helped me. This was what Michael had feared might happen. Once word got out that he'd helped one family, others would inevitably ask for the same assistance. What do you think I should do? He asked. Zara was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. I think you should help them if you can. Not because you have to, but because it's what Daddy would want you to do. How do you know that? Because even when his mind is mostly gone, the thing he still remembers is that friends help people. That's who he is at his core. That's what he taught you. Michael realized she was right. The essence of Dwayne's character, his compulsion to help others, to stand up for those who needed protection, to use whatever resources he had for good. These qualities had survived even the destruction of his memory. The Mitchell Foundation has helped 12 families so far, Michael said. People from my past who needed assistance. I know, and I think that's beautiful. But maybe it could be bigger than that. What do you mean? Zara smiled. And for a moment she looked exactly like her father had at 13. Maybe it could help kids like I was. Kids whose families have no connection to you but who need someone to believe in miracles. Michael considered this. The original foundation had been about honoring relationships from his past. But maybe Zara was suggesting something more important. Honoring the values those relationships had taught him. You know what that would mean, Michael said. If I start helping children with cancer who have no connection to me, there will be thousands of requests. I can't help them all. No, you can't help them all. But you can help some of them. And those families will help others. And those people will help even more. It's like throwing a stone in a pond. The ripples keep spreading. As they sat in the garden, watching the late afternoon sun filter through the trees, Michael thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. 3 years ago, he'd been a wealthy businessman focused on protecting his fortune and his reputation. Then a letter from his childhood friend had changed everything. That letter had cost him months of criticism and controversy. It had forced him to examine his values and his responsibilities. It had brought pain and complications he could never have anticipated. But it had also given him something priceless. The chance to save a life, to honor a friendship, and to discover what truly mattered in his own life. I'll think about expanding the foundation, Michael said finally. Daddy would be proud of you either way, Zara said. But I think helping more kids would make him happy. As evening approached and visiting hours ended, Michael said goodbye to Dwayne one more time. His friend looked at him with kind but vacant eyes. Thank you for visiting, Dwayne said politely. Thank you for being my brother, Michael replied. Walking to his car, Michael felt the weight of the wooden basketball in his pocket. Tomorrow he would return to Chicago and decide how to move forward. The Mitchell Foundation could remain small and focused, or it could grow into something that helped hundreds of children. Either choice would honor Dwayne's memory and the lessons he'd taught about kindness and loyalty. But as Michael drove through the familiar streets of Wilmington past the house where they'd grown up and the school they'd attended together, he realized that the most important promise had already been kept. He'd never forgotten his friend. Even when Dwayne could no longer remember him, Michael carried their friendship forward. The values Dwayne had instilled in a 13-year-old boy continued to guide a 60-year-old man. Love had proven stronger than memory. Friendship had transcended illness. And a promise made by two children with bleeding palms had shaped 2 lifetimes and saved at least 1 life, with the potential to save many more. That evening, sitting in his hotel room, Michael called his wife Yvette. How was your visit? She asked. Difficult, but important. Michael paused. I'm thinking about expanding the foundation. Helping more children with cancer. Not just people from my past. What changed your mind? Michael looked at the wooden basketball on his nightstand. Its carved words still visible after all these years. I realized that some gifts are meant to be shared, he said. The gift Dwayne gave me, the gift of caring about others. That's not something I should keep to myself. He'd be proud of you. I hope so, even if he can't remember why. As Michael ended the call and prepared for bed, he thought about all the children who might benefit from an expanded foundation. Kids fighting battles they shouldn't have to fight, families facing impossible choices between financial ruin and losing a child. He couldn't save them all, but he could save some of them. And maybe that was enough, because sometimes the greatest legacy wasn't what you accomplished for yourself, but what you enabled others to accomplish. And sometimes the truest measure of friendship wasn't whether someone remembered your name, but whether they remembered your heart. In the quiet of his hotel room, Michael made a decision that would affect hundreds of families he'd never meet. The Mitchell Foundation would grow. It would help children with cancer regardless of their connection to his past. It was what Dwayne would have wanted. It was what their friendship had always been about, and it was proof that some promises really do last forever. Not because they're remembered, but because they're lived. This story shows us that true friendship never dies, even when memory fades. Michael and Dwayne's promise to be brothers forever lasted through 40 years, illness, and criticism from the world. Sometimes the greatest victories happen not on basketball courts, but in the quiet moments when we choose love over fear, loyalty over convenience, and kindness over criticism. Where are you listening from today? Drop your location in the comments below. I love seeing our amazing community from around the world. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button to help spread this message of kindness and friendship. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that will inspire you and restore your faith in humanity. Speaking of inspiring stories, click on the video appearing on your screen right now for another amazing tale that will give you chills and make you believe in the power of human connection. Thank you for listening, and remember, some promises really are worth keeping forever.